is they have the Colts and the Bengals. It's the Colts' third preseason game, so Shane Steichen's going to play some starters for about a quarter and a half or so. And then the Bears and the Chiefs are going to be on the NFL Network. Don't think we're going to see a lot of like first string starting situations with either of those teams. So get into some college football, get into some pro football today. Joel Klatt on his podcast, working on getting Joel on the show. He's kind of risen to this Kirk Herbstreit level, but I've got a couple of contacts that are helping me out here. He loves Utah football, named his 12-team CFP. And as Utah is the number 3 seed winning the Big 12, beating Kansas in the Big 12 title game, which I thought was pretty interesting. So we're going to do some of that on the program today. Good guest list, really good guest list, as you become accustomed to on this little radio show to kind of get you through to Thursday afternoon. Emeka Anelli, RSL midfielder, has secured the bag, deservedly so, a contract extension for the second-year pro. So a little RSL news as RSL actually has a match coming up this weekend. Believe it or not, feels like they haven't played for a number of different weeks because they haven't. After losing in the League's Nation, there's so many cups, way too many cups. The Nations Cup, League Cup, whatever the hell it was. They lost to Houston again in a tournament and they were out. So it has been a minute since we have seen RSL back in action. All right, starting things off today, one of the best to ever do it at the University of Utah, played in the NFL for a number of years. Part of our broadcast team, sitting next to Bill Riley, the voice of the Utes. Today, it's Scott Mitchell. Scott's going to join us throughout the course of the season to preview Ute games, then break them down. So as we get to the season, it'll be more of a Friday, Monday situation with Scott. He's going to hop on today. Brian Howell, who covers the University of Colorado football team. We'll get with Brian today to talk about Trevor's interview yesterday and then get kind of a pulse on what's going on in Boulder as Brian stops by. One of the best college football writers, Ross Dellinger from Yahoo Sports, joins the show today. Ross has been tweeting about the Trevor Riley story, so I wanted to bring him on. Good job by Porter booking him. He's a tough get these days, so we're going to bring in Ross Dellinger on the program. And then, as we do every Thursday, it's time for the Big Show, Big Hour here on The Drive, brought to you by Big O Tires. A lot of big things happening. It's huge. Not going to do it. Craig Bowler, Jack Gordon Monson will be live in studio today. Then we'll catch up with our good friends from Handy and Handy. Shout out to Alan. He's not on the show. It's Garrett and Preston for a little sports court today. So, jam-packed show, busy show. Scott Mitchell, Brian Howell, Ross Dellinger, Craig Bowler, Jack Gordon Monson, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, and that guy, Porter Larson, on a Thursday. I don't know that I've had an interview as of late that has received the amount of attention that the Trevor hit did yesterday. Phone blowing up. Stories being written about it. We have been aggregated, but that's kind of the new deal, and there's really nothing you can do about it. Now that you've digested that over the past 24 hours, what are your thoughts on the Trev hit as he jumped on the show yesterday?
Man, obviously a lot of different directions you can go there. The Saudi stuff, the differences of opinion with how things are operating institutionally, the big picture takeaways you can take, not really from Trevor and his situation, but more so from Dion and what's going on with Colorado football. You know, those are different ways that we can look at this, and different angles that we can look at this. But what stood out to me, Spence, is that Trevor is a guy who has no filter, right? Very clearly doesn't have much of a filter. So what you get from him, whether it puts him in a good light or puts him in a position where you have folks reaching out to ask if he's okay, like he's going to tell you how it is. So that's what I'm looking at, right? The fact that there wasn't support for him, a guy who, you talked about this a little bit on the show, Spence, he went out of his way. He went the extra mile and then another mile for Dion, for Colorado, for Jackson State, for that whole product. And he was like creating his own identity to be part of that and didn't really get buyback, right? So for me, it's a bummer for Trevor. It's a bummer for a guy who I know works really hard, but it's also pretty complicated with the new landscape in college football and the meetings and the different ways he was going about, trying to get money. Man, there's a lot of different ways that we can go here. All of them are pretty interesting.
No doubt. So if you missed that interview, it's up on our podcast page, and we're available wherever you get your shows, also ESPN700sports.com. All right, our first guest today, Scott Mitchell, former Utah quarterback, played in the NFL. You guys know Scott. But before we get to Scott, on a Thursday, courtesy of our good friends and your good friends too at Beer Bar, right downtown Salt Lake City, Utah, for all of your sports watching needs, it is time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Beer Bar, located in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City. Get local beers and local sports at Beer Bar.
All right, the 12-team college football playoff is going to bring a vastly different experience for all of us fans, players, and coaches, but a lot of the conversation about will it bring a different result. Ultimately, the SEC and the Big Ten have combined to win 8 of the first 10 playoff titles. Trend's expected to continue this season. And so we've talked about, anytime I read or listen to a very respectable college football media member kind of give his take on where Utah lies in the landscape, I like to bring it on air in case you didn't hear it. So if you did not hear Joel Klatt's take a little bit earlier, here's what Joel had to say about the University of Utah.
The Big Ten, I think, is going to be Ohio State and Oregon in that game. Oregon only plays Michigan and Ohio State as far as ranked opponents in the regular season. We know, I have Ohio State ranked #1 to begin with, so I've got Ohio State and Oregon. I've got Ohio State winning that game and winning the Big Ten. In the SEC, I've got Georgia and Texas. Now, there's a couple of other teams that could sneak into that situation where they're getting a top 2 seed and playing in Atlanta for the SEC championship game. I think Missouri's schedule is favorable. They could be right there. Ole Miss is certainly right there. And you never know what Oklahoma could do if they actually get on a run through that difficult slate that they have, in particular in November. But I've got Georgia and OU, and I've got Georgia with that talented roster, returning quarterback in Carson Beck and the best coach in college football in Kirby Smart, winning the SEC over Texas. In the Big 12, I've got Utah playing, wait for it, Kansas. If you really look at what Kansas is and what their schedule is, there is a good chance that Kansas is going to be a top 2 seed in the Big 12. Now, death taxes in Utah football, I'm going to ride with Utah. You know that about me. Kyle Whittingham is an excellent coach, and when Cam Rising is their starting quarterback, what do? They win the conference and they go play in a big bowl. That's what they did in the Pac-12 with a couple of Rose Bowl berths. And that's who I've got in the Big 12. And then the ACC, I'm going to have an old historic rivalry, and I can't wait for it, a rematch of Florida State and Miami in the ACC championship game. There's something about Miami this year, and it's their quarterback. Cam Ward, I think, has the chance to be the best player in the ACC, maybe the best quarterback in the conference. And you've got to ride with quarterbacks, in particular when you're talking about conference championship games. So I like Miami to win the ACC and get a first-round bye. Here's the seeds that I'm giving them. I had Ohio State as my #1 ranked team. I'm going to put them at #1 in the playoff. I think their schedule is more favorable than Georgia's schedule. I could see Georgia stubbing their toe at some point along the road. Remember all of those difficult road games that they have. So even as an SEC champ, I think that they might have one more loss than Ohio State, and they would be #2 in the country. And then 3, I've got Utah, and 4, I've got Miami. Those are my top 4 seeds. Those are your programs getting a bye in the very first 12-team college football playoff.
So there you go. Joel Klatt obviously really likes Utah football, loves Coach Witt. Hard not to, right? I think Kyle has built pretty much unanimous respect across the landscape of the country when it comes to college football talking heads, obviously his peers, players, coaches, things like that. But Joel often talks about, and he gets a lot of pushback for this, strength of schedule. And it has to come into play. And if you are fortunate enough, as Utah is, to bring back a veteran-laden team stacked with talent and depth, and that is combined with what schedule rankers believe to be a very favorable schedule, you have to take advantage of it. And Joel believing Utah will be the #3 seed is a little bit of a new take, juxtaposed to what I've seen. I think most people are picking Utah to win the Big 12, but landing it as the #4 seed. But if Miami does what Joel believes that they could do in the ACC, maybe that lands Utah at 3 after the SEC and the Big Ten, of course. But our friends at 247 Sports, as far as their schedule rankings go, this is kind of interesting based off of what Joel just said. So again, if you're fortunate enough to have a stacked roster like Utah does, with veteran players like Utah does, and you're well coached and you have the pedigree that the Utes do, when you combine that with a schedule that's favorable, you have to take advantage. So according to 247 Sports, here's the schedule ranking in the Big 12 this year. The hardest schedule is Arizona State. That's 1 according to 247. Then it goes Colorado 2, right? Baylor at 3. West Virginia at 4. And by the way, West Virginia, Penn State down in Morgantown. That's one of the biggest openers they've had down there since probably 1990 or so. But West Virginia at 4. If West Virginia can get Penn State week 1, that's going to cause a lot of people talking. According to 247, BYU is at 5. Okay, and obviously this is a big year for Kalani. BYU, they face basically all the top 12 contenders, thought to be the top 12 contenders. They see Arizona, they see Kansas, they see K-State, they see OK State, and of course the Utes during a 9-week stretch in the middle of the season. Now, only one of those games is on the road, and of course that's here in Salt Lake. So maybe BYU can play the spoiler this year, but the 5th hardest schedule according to 247 Sports. All right, then it goes Houston, then it goes OK State at 7. And obviously, we've already circled that game when Utah hits the road. And if Utah is clean on their way to Stillwater and they handle their business there, then they come home and beat Arizona. We're going to have some really fun conversations around here. Speaking of Arizona, according to 247 Sports, they're at 8, so kind of middle tier. And as we keep going, then it's Iowa State. UCF is 10. TCU is 11. Then they have Cincinnati 12. At 13 is K-State, and K-State, by all measurable metrics, is thought to be the second favorite team to win the Big 12 this year. But K-State at 13, they have 10 games against Big 12 opponents in 24, but the Arizona game is a non-con game previously scheduled before the expansion, so obviously that's the same thing that Utah is facing against Baylor. K-State on the road for 4 of their first 7 games of the season, and they've got a new quarterback. You know, Avery Johnson's got to step up there. So we'll see, what they're able to do. They do not have back-to-back home games in Manhattan until mid-November. So a little bit of a chaotic schedule to start, but they're thought to have a pretty easy road. And as we scroll down, okay, you have Texas Tech 14, but it was interesting when Klatt said that he thinks Utah is taking on Kansas in the Big 12 championship game as opposed to Kansas State or OK State. Looking at the schedule, Kansas has the 15th ranked schedule, so the second easiest in the Big 12 this year. So they have their home games at 2 stadiums in the KC area. Their stadium is undergoing renovations, but they do not see Oklahoma State. They do not see Utah. They do have back-to-back rivalry matchups against K-State and Iowa State, which, of course, will be big for them, but they get a bye week in between. So I didn't realize Kansas' schedule was as favorable as it is. And by the way, that's a good team. I mean, they're picked, I think, 4th by the media. And so ultimately, that's something you have to look at. But at 16, according to 247 Sports, the easiest schedule in the Big 12 this year is Utah. Okay, and here's kind of some of the criteria. So ultimately, when you look at Utah's schedule, hosting Baylor September 7th, that's not a conference game as we've talked about. Their first conference game, OK State, on September the 21st. And ultimately, the non-con is pretty manageable. Their toughest road game will be OK State. They get Arizona at home. I'm interested to see what Colorado looks like because the final portion of the season, as we've already discussed, is going to be massive should they put themselves in a good spot. In Boulder, then it's home against Iowa State, and then you're in Orlando to take on UCF on the road. But Utah has a stacked roster coming back with depth, with veteran leadership, and you look at teams that win championships in college football, they have a lot of upperclassmen. And upperclassmen is a different term these days because it can mean you're 25 and you're in your 7th year of college football like Cameron Rising. But I found that interesting. Joel Klatt putting Utah at 3, winning the Big 12 behind the champs from the SEC and the Big 10. But college football's here, man. We're 2 days away, week 0 in Dublin. It's going to be FSU taking on Georgia Tech. And then obviously 1 week from today, Southern Utah is in town to take on Utah. 7 o'clock Mountain Time. That game's on ESPN Plus. You can watch it there. And obviously you can hear it right here on ESPN 700. All right out of the gates, more Utah football coming up next with Scott Mitchell. Then we're going to move over to Brian Howell, Ross Dellinger, Craig Bolerjack, Gordon Monson, too. Jam-packed show on a Thursday. Don't go anywhere. Keep it right here on ESPN 700.
Jordan Noyes kicks it off. It's a high end-over-end kick, backpedaling and taking it. K.D. Nixon 2 yards deep into the end zone. Nixon trying to get to the outside, breaks a tackle, and then he's tripped up at about the 17.5-yard line. University of Utah covering that well, and it was Hayden Fury, the backup linebacker, that made the tackle. So USC will begin things with about an 83-yard field in front of them. And Scott, the guy we'll keep an eye on tonight, wears number 15. His name is Drake London, and he's the best wide receiver in the Pac-12, maybe the best wide receiver in college football.
Yeah, and I think USC will come out and try to just get quick passes, let athletes go on athletes, and just say our athletes are better. But yeah, Drake London is going to be a challenge for Utah tonight. It'll be interesting to see how Utah handles it.
Keaton Slovis brings out the offense, 1st and 10 from his own 17-yard line. Keontae Ingram in the backfield with him, a 3-wide look here on 1st down, a play-action pass. Pocket collapses, Slovis throwing to the outside. It's caught at the 30-yard line by Drake London. His 49th catch of the year, 17, making a 13-yard gain on 1st down. The pass rush was there. It didn't quite get home, and he completes the first pass of the game.
Yeah, and they're kind of getting to Slovis quickly, but that's just too easy of a throw. It's one-on-one here, and then Drake London won that one-on-one.
1st and 10 at the 30-yard line. Turn and a give and a play-action roll. Firing to the outside. Flanker screen. That's Bryant. He's got it to the 40 and cut down at the 43-yard line. Gary Bryant, freshman who's having a terrific freshman year. They're going to go with some tempo now with USC. That's a 13-yard gain and another 1st down. And USC off to a good start throwing the football.
Yeah, I mean, they go 20 yards here, 40 yards in a quick turnaround here. But those bubble screens, that's what was a problem for Utah last year in Salt Lake City, and they didn't handle it well on this first play.
Trips to the left-hand side, a tight end and a tailback of the ball game. Utah with a 4-man down front, 5 now at the line of scrimmage for Utah. Slovis operates out of the shotgun. Keaton Slovis brings Drake London to the inside in the left slot. They hand it to Ingram. Ingram bounces to the outside, tripped up and taken down as he picks up a yard. That was Devin Lloyd shooting the gap and grabbing Keontae Ingram around the ankle for a 1-yard gain. 2nd down and 9 coming up.
Yeah, and good to see from Devin playing downhill and making a tackle there in open field. It's hard to do, and these athletes at USC, they're going to test you all night long.
Keontae Ingram sounds familiar. He ran for over 100 yards and a touchdown against Utah in the Alamo Bowl a couple of years ago, playing for Texas. Slovis going to change the play at the line of scrimmage now. He sees what he likes in the Utah defense. Now they shift around. Slovis on 2nd down and 9, hands it again to Ingram straight up the middle. Keontae Ingram 2nd level to the Utah 49-yard line. It'll be a gain of about 6 yards, maybe 7. It'll be 3rd down and 2 coming up here for USC. Yeah, and this is the money down.
It did, no question, money down, but an interesting play there. Utah had everyone lined up on their right side, and then USC changed the play, and then Utah went away from it, and they ran right into where all the other players would have been. They should have stayed where they were.
So 3rd down and 3 here, first 3rd down of the evening. Utah crowding the box. Slovis takes and gives on the fly sweep to Drake London, who's got 1st down yardage at the 45. He needed 3. He picked up 5. They do a little bit of everything with Drake London. That's a gain and a 1st down for USC to the Utah 45-yard line.
Yeah, it's like a jet sweep without the jet part. He just kind of at the snap just takes it. And really all it is a normal sweep play to the outside, well blocked, well executed.
Kind of a Cessna sweep more than a jet sweep right there. So 1st down and 10 USC as they have the ball on the opening drive. 12:24 to play here in the first quarter. 1st and 10 from the Utah 45-yard line. 4-wide look now for Slovis. Brings the receiver in tight, hands it again, this time to Ingram. Stacked up at the line of scrimmage and driven back Keontae Ingram. They tried to spread Utah out that time, and Utah was ready. A 1-yard gain. Tackle right up in front by Devin Kaufusi.
Yeah, and Utah is really stout against the run. You know, you still have to honor that run, even though USC is going to throw the ball a lot.
2nd down and 9. They empty the backfield now. Keaton Slovis stands by himself with a 5-wide look from the Utah 44. Now he changes the play with 15 on the play clock. Utah with 7 at the line of scrimmage. Now they dump out of it. Blitz off the edge, thrown to the outside. They've got London, and he'll be wrapped up and taken down for no gain at the 44-yard line. That was a great read on the outside. Who was that, Fabian Marks? Yeah, it was. Fabian had the initial. He nearly got to that football before London did.
Yeah, and this is something clearly Utah's worked on. They knew USC was going to try this. Great execution. You got to be aggressive on that play, and the corners and the linebackers did a great job.
3rd down and 9 from the Utah 44. Utah showing pressure. Here come the safeties. Hand off. Now a batted ball at the line of scrimmage. It's knocked down. Is it a live football? Nope. They'll say incomplete. Hawati Pututau got his hand up and knocked that ball down. Actually, it was Mika Tafua that got his hand on that ball and knocked it down, and that'll bring up 4th down. Utah showed pressure, got home, and knocked that ball down.
And they've shown pressure and brought it. They've shown pressure and jumped out of it. Very aggressive early on. Great sign here by this Utah defense early on to stop this USC team. They gave a couple of plays, but they really stopped USC when they needed to.
So that'll bring on the punt team. Ben Griffiths, redshirt junior, who stands 6'7" on to punt it. Covey stands at his own 10-yard line. They're going to punt away from Britton Covey toward the sideline. Britton looks up and fair catches at the 15-yard line. And that's where Utah will take over 1st and 10 here with 11:01 to play in the first quarter. So a good job by the Utah defense to stand up USC after they moved the ball pretty well in the first couple of plays.
Yeah, it was mass improvement from really this defense from the beginning of the year, playing downhill, playing more aggressive, reading and seeing and reacting in the moment. Utah needs to be aggressive here early on. It'll be interesting to see how if they go play action or if they kind of unload this thing.
All right, we're on YouTube. We like to stay ahead of the trends here at ESPN 700, so we've decided to start a YouTube channel. I wonder if anyone's going to follow suit, because it does feel like we're first out of the gates here.
Yeah, I think it's something that the Trailblazers are doing. The guys that are ahead of the curve. We talk about that a lot on the sports side. You got to be ahead of stuff, right? You got to see ahead, know what's coming. Know the trends, and yeah, we're going out on a limb, but maybe this YouTube thing catches on.
I'm only going to say this once. I begged us to do this 5 years ago. By the way, you're getting my bad side here on the right. Can we just go straight ahead? Is that possible? I don't like the right side. I don't like that look.
We got a bunch of angles.
All right.
Okay.
Well, we're just learning about this brand new platform called YouTube that we've decided to jump on. Anyway. All right, he's going to join us throughout the course of the college football season. We are 2 days away from week 0, where we're going to see in Dublin, we're going to see Georgia Tech take on FSU. We're 1 week away from Utah football, and Scott Mitchell is our guest on a Thursday. Scott, happy Thursday, man. How we doing?
I'm doing great. I'm headed to Las Vegas. There's maybe some things you need to know about me, Spence.
Okay.
We're forming a relationship here, and
Sure.
and it's new. And I've been known to associate with I think it's serial murderer and convicted, by the way. So I'm actually going to Las Vegas and talking on a true crime podcast show. Like you were talking about YouTube. So I'm off to do that right now.
Follow-up question: who is this serial killer that you know? And like who is this person?
I'm glad you asked. Actually, it's a guy I went to high school with. He was a publisher. He spent 2.5 months in my house helping me write a book and publish it. And then he decided that he was, he's trying to save the world or something, and divorced his wife. Well, he didn't divorce her. He murdered her because he's been convicted of it. And his new wife, his new wife's 2 children. So I don't know if you know of Chad Daybell and the whole thing in Idaho. We grew up together, and unfortunately I know him and knew him fairly well.
I don't know what to say.
Well, let's talk.
I have several.
Let's talk about.
Yeah. Let's just move on. We'll move off the Chad Daybell conversation. I did not know this is where the interview was starting. Yeah. Let's just move off and we'll go to football. I have a lot of inappropriate. See, Scott, what? Okay, now that you started the thing today saying we're formulating a relationship. You need to know about me. I'm a huge stand-up comedian fan, so I have several inappropriate jokes going around in my head, and I'm going to leave them off air for today, and we're just going to transition into football. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, just text them to me, and I'll find the humor in it.
Okay, fair enough. So, Scott, Joel Klatt today, and we're working on getting Joel on the show. Obviously, he's a big-time college football media guy. He picked Utah as the 3 seed in the CFP. He believes Miami's going to win the ACC and lock in that 4 seed. Then he has Ohio State and Georgia as his 1 and 2. That's the first I've heard anybody, I would say, credible, believing that Utah, not only will win the Big 12, but capture a 3 seed in the CFP. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I don't think that's too far-fetched. I don't think it's too far-fetched with all the teams that you've mentioned, because if you look at the schedule. Well, let's get to Joe in Utah. He's kind of a Utah homer and has been. He's been a big fan of Cam Rising, but he's also a guy that lives out in the West and knows it. Like, he understands the culture of Utah football. He's not someone on the East Coast that just reads whatever people say in the press. He pays attention, does his homework, and he realizes how good Cam Rising is, how deep this football team is, how they're really probably going to be favored in every game they play this year. This isn't a Pac-12 schedule that they've had some tough teams to face in the past. So, Utah can really take care of business. It'll be tough in the beginning of the year. I mean, starting out with Oklahoma State and Arizona, 2 of the better teams in the conference, will be good. But there's some teams Utah doesn't face. So I'm not surprised. There was a lot of buzz about Utah early on in the spring, and then it kind of waned a little bit. But there's just no way that Missouri and Penn State and some of these schools are going to stay above Utah in the polls right now. And so Utah, if they win, will slide into the top 10 relatively quickly, and they're going to be a team that's like 7-6, and they keep winning. They'll easily slide into one of those top spots in the country. When you talk about Miami doesn't play anybody this year. Miami's got an amazing schedule to do well. The same with Ohio State. Ohio State's got a pretty good schedule. And the one team you mentioned was Georgia. And Georgia, of all the 4 teams that Joe has in his preseason prediction, Georgia might have the toughest road. They're going to play, I think 3 or 4 of the top 12 teams in the country on their schedule right now, and those is Alabama, and so they have a tougher road, at least a tougher schedule. Now they're really good. I mean, it's not like they're not good, but yeah, look, I'm massively bullish on Utah. And I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be one of those top 4 teams in the country at the end of the year.
So I've asked a few of our guests this, and former players such as yourself. I wonder what your take is on. So last year opening day was Florida, and this year it's Southern Utah.
Right.
As you go through camp, I mean, look, as a player, you can't help but to look at the schedule. You know who you're playing week 1. Do you like a stiff challenge right out of the gates, or do you like and no disrespect to SUU, do you like a little bit of a tune-up right out of the gates?
So I really like this schedule for this team this year for a couple of reasons. The secondary is new, and it's going to take a minute for those guys to figure out new positions. Some of them are new to the program. Some like Teo Johnson, who I think is going to be a great player at Utah. He wasn't playing safety. I mean, he did some of it a year ago. It's a bit of a transition for him. Julian Blackman, if you remember a few years ago, did it very well, but there was some growing pains. And so to get that first game, but also for Cam Rising, for Brant Keithy, to get a game, like those guys just need to get on the field and feel what it's like to be playing a game. And to do it against an opponent that's not on the road, that's not a really good opponent, You just want to get your feet wet. But then you need good opponents because you've got to be ready for Oklahoma State in the conference opener. You can't have cupcakes. You can't have a lack of speed, a lack of talent to play your non-conference, your whole non-conference schedule, or you're just not going to be up to the speed of what Oklahoma State is. So I like Baylor, which is a conference opponent, but not a conference opponent, in that second game. And then to kind of have, okay, we can evaluate how this game went. We now see, okay, this is the speed. Players are going to get used to that. And then you have another week of a decent opponent. It's not an SUU. I think it's clearly a better opponent, but it's not a Power 5 opponent either. And you make those final adjustments to where it really tunes you up. You're going to get Cam Rising's going to get the dirt knocked off, the Russ Brant Keithy. You're going to get the secondary primed and ready, and these other positions where they're new players. And then you can kind of go into the conference schedule with some confidence, with, you're used to playing good opponents, and it's not just a shock. Because I remember Utah had a terrible non-conference schedule. They're all cupcakes. There was no Power 5 school in any of them. And then they went to USC to open the conference play, and these wide receivers from USC just ran by the Utah defenders. And it's just because they weren't ready for the speed, because Julian Blackman and all those guys, as the season went on, got used to the speed of Power 5 football. But you can't see it, you can't replicate it in practice, and you certainly can't replicate it if you're playing garbage opponents in all your non-conference schedules. So I love how the schedule's set up this year for how this team is made up. If you're a veteran team and you have most of your guys coming back, maybe you don't want to play as tough a schedule. But this year, I think it's a really good balance to get Utah ready for that first conference opponent, because that, to me, is the biggest game of the year for the team, the Oklahoma State game.
A little bit of a non sequitur, but I wanted to ask you your take. I was down in Utah County yesterday. Shout out to all my people in Utah County. I'm huge down there. And it was for an event put on by BYU alumni, and I had Matt Bellini on the show to talk about the event. And I asked him about BYU Utah coming back on the schedule as conference foes for the first time since 2010. And he said he was excited for the game because we all are, but he talked about 1988 and said it still sticks in his craw, Scott. I've never talked to you about that. I was 10 years old. I have faint memories of it, but you're a legend for a lot of reasons because you did a lot of great things here. But I've got one friend specifically, whenever he hears your name, he's like, he'll always be my guy because of 1988. When you think about, because it was unexpected, and you trounced him. What was it like for you to be the quarterback during that game that means still to this day a lot to Utah football fans?
Well, you might have friends in Utah County, and I grew up in Utah County, and I don't know how many friends I actually have there because I went to the dark side. I'm related to Lavelle Edwards. My parents went to BYU. I have some deep connections with some of the, Gifford Nielsen was a close family friend. I used to go to football camps with Gifford at Utah State growing up, and I love him to death. He was my hero. I always thought I was going to end up at BYU, and I didn't. And here you're a Mormon kid, you're a quarterback, you have all these ties. It's like, what in the world? How could you not go there? And so to go back, and Utah hadn't won against BYU in 10 years. And quite frankly, we were kind of the little brother. They just picked on us and beat us up every year. It had been 10 years since Utah won. And when you're that underdog, when it's, for me, it was all those close relationships and all that stuff to kind of, to beat an opponent that you have so much invested in, which is what really this rivalry is. It's on both sides of it. There's so much personal investment from a family side to a neighborhood side to a religious side. I mean, just, across the board. And so that brings out so much emotion in people. And to win a game like that, for me it was just fun. I've watched some of the highlights of that game. We had them pegged. We knew exactly what they were going to do. They were a really good team. And a lot of times good teams become really predictable because they're just better. They're gonna just beat you up and be better than you. And so there weren't any surprises. It wasn't a shock to what they were going to do, and we just executed well. And we were really playing very well at that time of the year. And it was just one of those days where literally everything just fell right.
Well, like I said, I know a lot of people still to this day remember that day for sure, including Matt Bellini, as you shared with me yesterday. All right, Scott, let's move back to the Utes this year. So you'll be calling the games with Bill again. I want, from your vantage point, as a guy who played quarterback at the highest of levels, what specifically you'll be looking for when Cameron Rising runs out and is under center for the first time, the first few series, because it's been so long. It's going to be 600 days, essentially, between game action when SU rolls into town next week. As a guy who played the position, what specifically will you be looking for from Cam to indicate that he's healthy and fit and ready to go?
Yeah, it's a really good question because you're never going to question his toughness. You're never going to question his leadership, his passion, the way he plays the game. It's really about two things physically for me, and the one that's most important is not his legs, it's his arm. His arm, there was something wrong with him. You could see that, his arm wasn't right before he got injured, and he worked through a lot of that, and he's a tough kid, so he plays injured. And it's just so hard when there's something not right in your arm, and he's had some issues with it. He had the whole surgery against USC in the COVID year and just kind of blew him out of things there. And then again, USC, when Utah beat them in Salt Lake City, he got injured in that game, and he just wasn't quite the same. So does he have that arm velocity? Because I really saw it in spring. I was like, this is the strongest I've seen Cam Rising's arm. So we'll see where he was from spring to the fall. That to me is the biggest thing. And then it's just, is the ball coming out at the right time with the right pace? Is he making mature decisions? Because there's a lot of guys when they play a long time, some of them regress, and they don't get to the next level of reading defenses and understanding how things are. You look at Bo Nix, he really progressed from Auburn to his first year at Oregon to his second year. Michael Penix the same way. They got to this real elite level, and Cam Rising should be at that elite level. I mean, if you're 7 years in college football, you should know things as well as your coach does almost, with all the experience he's had. So is he making those elite level decisions, and is the velocity on the football? I'm not worried from a physical side because he's had well over a year and a half to recover from an ACL, and that's more than enough time. But is his arm recovered? That's the big thing for me.
All right, let's move over now to your thoughts on what appears to be a very deep group of wide receivers. We discussed the potential, and I've talked about it for a number of years. Jerez Anderson, the last receiver to go over 1,000 yards, that was 2014, I believe. Are there one or two that's standing out? We know that Brandt's certainly going to be Cameron's probably preferred target because those two have such great chemistry, having played college football together for years. But other than Brandt, are there one or two wide receivers that you'd like to point to that you believe that maybe this year could break that streak and potentially go over 1,000 yards? And what's the process like for Cam to, again, as somebody like you who played the position, to make sure that chemistry is ready to roll? How long does something like that take for some of the transfers like Dorian, Singer, et cetera?
Well, Dorian's done well, and and he had the luxury of spring ball, and I think he had the luxury of realizing that he's going to be a big part of things here, and that just kind of boosts the pep in your step. When you just ask Tua if you have a coach that likes you or don't. How it changes your demeanor, and so I think you're going to see that from Dorian. But when you have Damian Alford, who came from, I believe it's Syracuse, and he wasn't here in the spring. Very talented. I mean, he's big receiver. I love big receivers too, and so he's a guy that can create a lot of mismatches for you. But it's just understanding and getting comfortable with the offense. So you may see him limited earlier in the year. Like they'll pick their spots with him. They'll certainly want to get him involved, but They'll slowly, the evolution of him. I mean, Manir McClain is another guy who's a big-bodied receiver. He came from USC. I've always liked him. I don't hear a lot about him now, and it's disappointing because I think he's a talent. Money Parks is going to be – there's just so many guys. And you ask about a 1,000-yard receiver, and I'll just tell you that's never going to happen when Kyle Whittingham is coaching. And it's not a knock on Kyle Whittingham. Look, he has a style. He has a system. It's served him well. He's won championships with it. He's one of the top coaches in the country, but he doesn't run a spread offense. It's a run-first offense. The dominant formation that Utah runs is 2 tight ends. They may run 3 tight ends this year with as many as they have, and the versatility of what they can do with that group. So as a wide receiver, and you're not in a spread offense, you're not throwing it like 5 downs in a row, and you're not throwing the ball like consistently down the field like you saw with Washington a year ago. Some of these teams that's what you're going to have, and that's not the philosophy of Utah football. It's a balanced ball control offense that is going to play more to your defense and just don't turn the ball over offense. Be efficient. And so you're not going to see that. Now, if the running back position is really weak this year, then, yeah, you might see more passing, and especially with a very experienced Cam Rising and the depth you have at wide receiver. But I just don't see Utah just opening it all up and just, hey, we're just going to throw the ball all over the field. I could see maybe a little bit about how Oregon was last year in the Big 12 or the Pac-12, where, there was a balance of pass and run, but it was pretty up-tempo stuff. So there's certainly the talent there. There's certainly the ability. I just don't think the philosophy of how Utah is that you're going to see those, 1,000-plus yard receivers.
Let me follow up with this. What, just your personal preference, and obviously acknowledging that Coach Witt has his ideas about how things should be run, and that's fine because he obviously is an elite coach. But is there a preferred Scott Mitchell number as far as balance goes? Do you like 50-50 entirely? Do you like 60-40 one way? How would you like to see the offense distributed as far as the ratio between run and pass?
So for me, it's more about who you have. Coach Shula, Don, legendary Don Shula, he says, why in the world would I take the ball out of Dan Marino's hands? Why? He's just dumb. And if you watch Dan Marino every day, you would agree with him. He's just amazing talent. And, he just did stuff that no one else did. And you have a quarterback like Cam Rising. I just think you're going to see more, why would you want to take the ball out of his hands? He's the most proven guy. He's the most reliable guy. He's the guy that, in the past, you saw a lot more of Cam scrambling and running. And I think you're going to see more of Cam throwing in more of those critical situations in the past. So it might be, 60-40 is typically normal. A spread offense might be 75-25, somewhere between 60 and 75, and, 65-35. I'll go there.
All right, Scott, before I set you loose, I wonder your thoughts on the dynamic that I've been discussing on the show, because and Kyle himself talks often, and Mark Harlan, who joined the show yesterday, they all kind of acknowledge that while everyone's grateful that a landing spot manifested in the Big 12, which is a P4 conference, and you've got to be in one of the 4, ultimately, if you're not at the lunch table where the SEC and the Big 10 sit, you still have to stay frosty, and you still have to make sure that you're handling your own business. So how much, and, to talk to the fan base here, because, of course, we all really enjoyed the Pac-12 experience, and Back the Pack, things like that became very prevalent. But for me this year, I'm more like riding with Utah, for watching Utah's back, and we have West Virginia, Penn State week 1. We have a lot of big non-con Big 12 games. But isn't it more about making sure that you as your individual brand is in the best spot possible to make sure that when this next iteration of change happens, you're on the right side of delineation? Like, talk about the dichotomy of cheering for Utah only, and then maybe juxtapose that to the new conference they find themselves in, at least for now.
Well, I think conference affiliation, conference support, conference backing went out the window a long time ago. And clearly when some of these very precious traditional long-standing conferences like the Pac-12 can break up USC and UCLA and they can go off to the Big Ten. Anything's possible, and if you're smart and if you want to live in this landscape, you can't be foolish enough to think, all right, we're all in this together, the esprit de corps kind of idea about the conference. You have to take care of the University of Utah above and beyond anything else. It's going to continue to change. It's going to continue to evolve. There's no one that's denying that. No one's, it's out in the open, and clearly it's been, made manifest that college football is going to become very much like the professional league, professional football, and some iteration of that model will be how it looks. The polls this year, Spence told the story. There's one team in the Big 12 that's in the top 12 teams in the country. The rest of the conference is almost, at the bottom end of the top 25, and the top teams in the country predominantly are in the SEC and the Big Ten. So that the polls, everyone in college football is saying, we don't respect the Big 12. We don't think very much of it. And if you want any chance at all to be relevant in college football and you're Utah, you can't be a middle of the pack Big 10, Big 12 team. You just can't. You have to be the top dog, and you've got to figure out how to be relevant every single year. You have to be what Oklahoma and Texas were to the Big 12 before they left. You have to be that team that goes, the conference title goes through Utah every year. It has to. And if you have any other mindset, you're fooling yourself, because then just take the playoffs. If one team in the Big 12 gets in the playoffs this year, the playoffs are going to go on for almost 2 months. And that team, if it's Utah, needs to go deep in the playoffs. You need to get to at least the semifinals so people can be talking about you. If you lose in the first round, then it's over. No one's going to be talking about anyone in the Big 12 if there's an early exit from the playoffs. And those are the things you got to do to keep yourself and make yourself relevant moving forward. You have to have this perception from everyone. We're a big deal in this conference, and we're a team to be reckoned with in college football.
Well, Scott, I never thought I'd say this sentence, but enjoy Vegas while talking on a podcast about Chad Daybell, okay?
It'll be interesting.
Sure will. Thank you.
You got it.
All right, Scott Mitchell, former quarterback from the University of Utah. Appreciate Scott's time today. All right, get ready for an action-packed homestand as the Bees take on the Round Rock Express at Smith's Ballpark from August 20th to the 25th. Text Bees right now to 33986 to enter to win. Did you this is kind of like the Trevor Riley interview yesterday. Were you aware of Scott's connection to Chad Daybell?
I was. Scott and I actually did a show together while you were out of town somewhat recently and discussed this very thing. We got into the true crime stuff a little bit. It was fun. It was the middle of summer, so you forgive us for doing so. There wasn't much sports going on. He also shared a locker with O.J. Simpson for a minute.
Okay.
So there's a few connections there.
Let's go ahead and not have Scott in studio. Over the phone works just fine for me.
No, he's actually in studio next week.
No, I don't. So Scott he grew up with Chad Daybell, and he shared a locker with O.J. Simpson?
At some point, yeah.
Let's catch a break.
That's our guy, though.
I don't want to get in trouble. All right, 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Coming up next, if you missed Trevor Riley on the show yesterday, it was something else. Brian Howell's going to stop by. He covers Colorado. So he's with BuffZone.com. Ross Dellinger, one of the best college football media members, podcaster, writers in the country, will stop by. An entire hour with Bowler and Monson, the big hour later. So keep it right here on ESPN 700.
Cam Rising at the line of scrimmage, changing the play. First down handoff, Pledger into the hole, spins off a tackle, gets to the 16-yard line, picks up a yard, and that's it. They ran right at the teeth, and Utah got no push up front that time. Tackle on the play by Rover linebacker Raymond Scott.
Yeah, this is just a straight-ahead zone read here. The tight end pulls and tries to seal that backside and just gets there a little late and kind of gets the play blown up. But, this Utah team's got to come off the ball here.
4 wide look on 2nd down and 9 from their own 16. USC with 4 at the line of scrimmage, 7 in the box. Play action, flanker screen thrown out into the flat to Britton Covey. He's got it at the 20 and spun down. That's Brant Keithy, actually, who came up with that grab. We're a distance away from the field. The 8s and the 0s get mixed up. Keithy picks up about 4 on the play. 3rd down and 5 coming up.
Seeing a better job of second down. Utah's shown so much run on second down. And this is a high percentage play. It's almost like a running play still. And now they're in a manageable 3rd down.
4 wide look on 3rd down and 5 from the Utah 20. They bring Keithy into the left slot. Cam backpedals, looks, fires outside, caught, complete to the outside, but taken down after a 1-yard gain. Mekhi Bernard out of the backfield. USC strung that out, used that athleticism and their speed to get there, and Utah's going to have to punt on a 3 and out.
Yeah, and Cam's got to make a better throw there. He threw it a little bit behind Bernard. He gets it to him in stride. He can turn that shoulder upfield and maybe miss a tackle, but get close to the 1st down.
Gary Bryant back to receive. They've got an off-return man as well back there. Cam Peasley stands at his own 8-yard line to punt this ball away. USC is going to set up the return here. Peasley's punt. Good spiraling kick. Looking up into the sun is Bryant. He takes it at his own 35, and he is going to be wrapped up and taken down immediately at the 35-yard line. Good kick coverage that time by the Utah special teams. Like Clark Phillips was down there doing it. Timeout on the field. Both teams have had the ball. Both teams had the punt. 9:03 to play here in the first quarter from the LA Memorial Coliseum in the Big O Tires broadcast booth. Today's Utah football broadcast being brought to you proudly by Bud Light. Utah fans, welcome back to Rice Eccles this year. This year, Bud Light is for the fans. I'm Bill Riley. That's Scott Mitchell. Slides downstairs with the LA Memorial Coliseum. 9:03 to play first quarter. 0-0 our score. Both teams had the ball once. SC moved at the midfield, had to punt. Utah went 3 and out. SC has it 1st and 10 at their own 36-yard line. I thought it was a pretty good effort by the defense on that first drive, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, I liked what you're seeing, playing downhill, playing aggressively, not letting these athletic guys get going, get them stopped before they get started. They didn't do a good job on the one bubble screen. They did it on the second one, and when you cover it, then the teams tend to go away from it. And so Utah's shown that they're going to cover that, so you probably won't see a lot more of that in this game.
4 wide look here on 1st down from their own 36-yard line for Keaton Slovis and the USC Trojans. Keontae Ingram remains in the ball game as the lone tailback standing next to Slovis in the shotgun from the 36-yard line. Slovis changing the play now, looking at the Drake London to his left. Utah with 6 at the line of scrimmage. Motion man, the tight end, Wolf. They're going to throw that flanker screen outside. Trigg has it. He's beyond the 40 and out to about the 43-yard line goes freshman Michael Trigg. He's a big dude, too. 6'4", 245 for Trigg, who picks up 7 on 1st down.
And what's interesting is that Utah's in a 3-man front.
Here they go again, throwing that ball outside, this time to London. He's to the 50, to the Utah 48 and out of bounds. That's a 1st down for USC. Utah's playing off, Scott, and they are just throwing that ball in that flanker screen to the outside.
Yeah, and the outside corner's doing a good job. It's the guys that are filling on it. They got to see that early. They did it earlier in the game. They're not. I mean, I thought Utah defended it, and USC go away from it, and they haven't. 1st and 10 from the Utah 48 after the 1st down for Keaton Slovis. He's going to throw again, rolling out to his right-hand side, looking down the field, throws underneath and incomplete off the hands of Keontae Ingram. And incomplete it goes. He's got 11 catches on the year, does Ingram, but that one hit him right in the hands and then goes incomplete. 2nd down coming up. Yeah, it's almost designed by Ingram just to go out in the flat there, and he just drops the ball. Little bit behind him, but I mean, just in his hands. So he'll come out of the game, and Darwin Barlow, the TCU transfer, comes in for the first time here today. 2 receivers left, 2 receivers right on 2nd down and 10 for USC. Utah with 5 and 6 near the line of scrimmage now. Slovis in the shotgun. Now Utah's going to show a blitz right up the middle they come. USC picks it up. Slovis looking outside, firing, caught by London inside the 40. And down to the Utah 38-yard line. They'll give him the 38-yard line. A pitch and catch of 10 yards and a 1st down. Utah blitz, Scott, but SC picked it up. Yeah, and you got to get there if you're going to blitz like this. Well, they kind of drop back in coverage, but everything's done right. I mean, you're covering. He's right on him right there.
All right, I'm going to do the rest of the show, but I'm going to have a hard time getting it out of my head that Scott Mitchell grew up with Brian Daboll. And is it Daboll?
Chad. Let's not confuse the New York Giants head football coach with the guy who killed his family.
And he is currently on his way to Vegas to go on a true crime podcast. Is it Chad Daybell? Is that how you?
Chad Daybell, yeah.
I don't like that stuff. Like, people love true crime podcasts.
Yeah.
I don't love that stuff. So, like, I heard about it. I'm like, I don't need to know any more information.
I am pretty fascinated by the true crime stuff. So Scott and I got pretty deep into it at one point. But I don't know what that says about me and what it says about, like, our country at large, that we love true crime stuff, murder stories. Yeah. I don't know what that says.
Not into it. But you know what I'm into? Stories about former college football assistant coaches going to Saudi Arabia to try to petition the PIF, the Public Investment Fund, to invest in NIL. I'm interested in that. Our next guest is Brian Howell. He covers Colorado. Brian, happy Thursday, sir. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys today?
We're well. I appreciate the time. So we had Trevor Riley on the show yesterday, and that interview kind of blew up. He's currently in Hawaii. So Trevor, of course, played his college football here. I've done a lot of radio with Trevor over the years. I wonder what your thoughts are on this story that Trevor has now resigned. He has given his resignation letter to several media outlets, and among the details that have come out is Trevor took a trip to Saudi Arabia and met with Saudi officials to try to get them to invest some of the public investment fund that they've invested in other sports into Colorado football. Brian, what's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I actually just saw that story about an hour or so ago, and it's kind of surprising. And it sounds like he kind of acted on his own in doing that, and it didn't pan out for whatever reason. But very interesting. Obviously, in the world of NIL, people are going to try to find whatever they can find, I guess.
So did you have any interactions with Trevor when he was down in Boulder? Did you get to know him at all?
No, I never met him. We don't get to talk to a lot of people with the program, and so.
All right. Hello, Brian. Are you there? Hello, Brian. Are you there?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're breaking up. Sounds like you're driving through kind of a dead spot. So we'll see if we can make this interview work. All right. We can move on if you're not familiar with Trevor and any of that stuff. Just generally speaking, what's the buzz down there? Obviously, Utah sees Colorado. We're the home of the Utes on the road, third to last game of the season. How improved, Brian, do you think Colorado is going to be this year?
Yeah, I think they're very improved. I think they improved in the trenches, which is what they needed the most. And I think they added depth in the secondary and at receiver and linebacker as well. And so I think they're a much better football team than they were a year.
Okay, so let's see if we can get Brian in a little bit of a better spot. All right, so right out of the gates, we were talking about this earlier. The schedule's not very easy for Colorado. According to 247 Sports, they have, I think, the third hardest schedule in the Big 12. Is it realistic to expect them to go bowling year two under Deion Sanders? Sweet. All right, so we'll just move on from that. We are going to bring in Ross Dellinger coming up at 3:30. Ross is one of the best college football media members, writing podcasters out there, and Ross has kind of picked up on the Trevor Riley stuff, so we'll bring in Ross coming up at 3:30. Craig Bolerjack, Gordon Monson live in studio for the big show, big hour we do every Thursday. Good stuff with Scott Mitchell earlier today. Scott is going to stop by during the season. We're probably going to do a Monday, Friday thing with Scott just to kind of preview the week ahead for Utah, the game ahead for Utah, then break it down on a Monday. So it looks like that's going to be the situation. So stay tuned for that. Of course, a lot of good Utah coverage over the course of the season from Scott. So stay tuned for that. All right. While we're kind of waiting to see if Brian can actually get in a place where we can talk to him on the phone, we're going to do more football coming up. But I wanted to get to this because over the past week, we've seen a little bit of a mea culpa from both Gordon Hayward and Donovan Mitchell, right? So ultimately, if you haven't heard, our guy John Paul Chunga, friend of the show, former producer of the show, he had Gordon Hayward on his podcast, Round Ball Roundup podcast. And JP's great, so of course it's good. It's worth your time to listen. And I thought some interesting things were said by Hayward that we haven't heard him say for quite some time. And I really wonder, I'm not sure, my inclination is yes to the following. The Jazz probably will have Hayward back in the arena at some point. I mean, I think one of the cool things that Ryan and the new group have done is they've really done a pretty good job of bringing some of these former guys back to embrace them as part of the extended Jazz family, right? So we've already seen, initially, I think it was Steve Starks who put together kind of the kumbaya meeting between Darren Williams and Coach Sloan before Jerry passed. I still have my questions about how that message was received by Jerry. I know that the walking line and the propaganda on the Jazz side was that everything is great, but it's not my understanding of how Jerry received it. He's a very proud man. But it was a excellent effort for a relationship that I think left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths around here as far as how Darren handled it. Certainly left a bad taste in my mouth because I'm a Jerry guy. So good for Darren for at least making the attempt. If Jerry was not necessarily open to, having that sort of conversation and making sure that bridge was rebuilt, that's not Darren's fault, right? We all make mistakes. It's like my mama likes to say, make it a great mistake, acknowledge your role, apologize, and try to learn from it and move forward. We all stumble oftentimes. It's part of life. So credit to Darren for at least trying to do that. But with this kind of approach that the Jazz have to bring back all of the old Jazz players. I mean, last year, and of course, part of this was, hey, we're not going to be very good, so come to 80s night and see Daryl Griffith, right? We're not going to be very good, so come see Booze and Darren and Memo and those guys. I do think at some point, and it may have already happened, there will be an invite from the Jazz to Gordon Hayward to bring him back. Does Gordon want that? I have no idea. Gordon Hayward, throughout the course of his career, he made one all-star team, but he made hundreds of millions of dollars. And when you're in that stratosphere, you might not give a rip. But now that he's doing the rounds on podcasts, and, he didn't just do JP's. I think I saw him on like a Barstool pod. It was something on social. And he clearly has one of those professional podcast setups in his home. I wonder if Gordon is going to try to do the thing now that in his post-career, he's going to look back and say, I should have done this, I should have done that. I don't know. But it does look like, ultimately, Hayward is now being a little bit more front-facing when throughout the course of his career, he was a recluse. I mean, during his rookie year, when I was working at my old station, Gordon Monson and I, we had Gordon Hayward on our show every single week. And it was sponsored, so Gordon was getting paid for it. And he could not have been less interested. And we tried every single angle. He just wasn't into it. Didn't care, right? And ultimately didn't have to. Highly paid, liked to isolate. This was a guy that wanted to stay home and play video games, hang out with his kids and his wife. And I said at the time when Hayward left, it's a real problem if the Utah Jazz in the modern day and age of the NBA can't hold on to a white dude that wants to play video games and hang out with his family. This is not a 25-year-old dude that's hitting the clubs and wanting to meet girls. This was a guy that felt like he was catered to being here in Utah, right? And obviously it didn't end well. But among the things he told JP, and again, I would really encourage you to go listen to it, and it's being reacted, I would say, pretty widespread negatively, because I still think, even though it was a number of years ago now, there are a lot of hard feelings from Jazz Nation about the way Hayward handled it. Now, and as I have said, if you've listened to me for years talk about this, ultimately one of the strange things we do with these athletes is they're the best in the world at what they do, and they're told where they have to live to do it, right? In any other industry, if you develop a skill set to the point where you are the best in the world at what you do, you can more or less decide where you do that, certainly in the modern day and age where not a lot of people have to be at offices every single day. But when it comes to athletes, you are drafted, you move to that city, and that's where you live now doing what you do, okay? So I do want to acknowledge that. I have always found it a little bit odd that the best of the best in their craft and with their skill are told where you have to live, and you do have to do it there. Now, I can certainly hear people saying, well, that's why they're paid what they're paid. That's what the money's for, right? The old saying from Mad Men, right? So ultimately, though, Hayward, you guys remember the deal. Summer 2017, July 4th, we're all waiting for the news. It breaks. He bounces. And what I have said for years, and I still maintain this to be true, I'm not mad at Gordon for wanting to live somewhere else. I'm not mad at Gordon for what I perceive to be simply wanting to be among the bigger stars and the bigger brands in pro basketball. I've said it for years. I think he just wanted to sit at a different lunch table. I think he was the kid that walked into high school, was friends with some nerdy dudes, sat at the lunch table, looked over at the popular kid table and said, I want to sit there, right? So in his mind, bigger market, Boston, college coach, all that. But I just think he wanted to be thought of after making an all-star team with the Jazz on par with like Durant and LeBron and Steph and those guys. I think that's why he made the move as much as anything else. So I'm not faulting him for that. If that's what you want and you're as good at your craft as Gordon was in 2017, I have no problem with exercising the right as a free agent to go somewhere else. You've earned that, put in time, okay, do it. That's the deal. My whole thing with Hayward was always this. Let somebody know, okay? Don't be clandestine. Don't be secretive. Don't be petty. And just go to the Jazz and say, look, thank you for drafting me in 2010 when a lot of people weren't sure if my skill set was going to translate into pro basketball. And Kevin O'Connor made the pick. It turned out to be the right pick. And, if you're Hayward, okay, thank you for drafting me. Thank you for coaching me. Thank you, Jerry Sloan. Thank you, Ty Corbin. Thank you, Quinn Snyder. And I feel like I put in 7 good years here. I gave you good years. I made an all-star team. We went to the playoffs. We won a series. Thank you. My family and I prefer to live in a different place, and we have decided we want to live in Boston. Because you know what happens then? Then at the time, Dennis Lindsay calls Danny Ainge and say, look, let's work something out. Now, Danny's such a killer, there's a chance he might say, we don't really need to. He's coming anyway. But I know the Jazz had interest then at potentially moving Hayward in exchange for probably a little bit of draft capital and a young Jay Crowder. Now, Jay ended up here anyway, played a couple of years here in Utah. But if you get Jay Crowder and some assets in exchange for Gordon Hayward, at least you're not left high and dry. That has always been the issue that I don't think is talked about enough. You hear anecdotal things like write ownership a letter, right? Like call Gail Miller. Certainly all those things should have been done. And I think Gordon, in an honest moment, probably would acknowledge that he handled his exit poorly. But the bigger issue to me was leaving the franchise and the organization high and dry because, look, if you draft a guy and you develop him, and the credit goes to the player, I want to be clear, but he turns into an all-star in year 7, and you lose that asset for nothing, it's a death sentence. It's actually shocking that Dennis Lindsay got this thing back on track in 2 years by drafting Donovan, developing Gobert. Of course, Quinn deserves a lot of credit there as well. But my issue with Hayward has never really been like, hey, you left us. You left Salt Lake. You left Utah. You didn't call ownership. My issue has always been, okay, you want to go to Boston? That's fine. This happens all the time. It happens every offseason in pro basketball. But you know what doesn't happen very often? Your best player simply leaving you, and you can't parlay that into something. They even were able to get a trade exception for Boozer that they used to get Al Jefferson. And I was never a big Al Jefferson guy, but that's not nothing. Al had some good years here. Boozer wanted to go to Chicago. Kevin O'Connor executed a move where he was able to get a trade exception that he sent to Minnesota for Al Jefferson. Like, again, not a home run. Boozer's a much better player than Al Jefferson, but at least it's something. Something's better than nothing. So to hear Gordon on JP's pod this week say that the best year of his career in pro basketball was his final year in Utah. And by the way, it was, because if you remember, he was awesome. All-star. We're talking about 22 points, 5 boards, 4 assists in a system that, if you remember, was predicated to lean into their strength of being a big physical defensive team. Dennis Lindsay came on my show prior to that year, and he said, hey, if we score 72 points, I don't give a rip as long as we hold them to 68. Like, they were a run-the-football offense with limited usage and low possessions, and Hayward still put up 22, 5, and 4. All-star team. That was a good team. Remember Joe Johnson? They advanced to the playoffs. They beat the Clippers. So I think it was good for Jazz fans to hear Gordon say what he said. But I just wonder what the reaction will, okay, I'm going to say will be, because I do believe the Jazz are going to have Gordon Hayward back at some point. I think the Jazz are going to have Gordon Hayward back in the building. They'll probably do something to honor him. Obviously, not a jersey retirement. He doesn't deserve anything like that. But they'll do the fun video, right? We'll watch Gordon come into the league with his Opie haircut, right? Maybe we'll get a little Too Big Yo rap on the side, which we can only hope. And then we'll watch him evolve into the slick hair, gaining weight, putting muscle on, and all-star before he left. How will you react when that happens is my sincere question. All right, also, Donovan Mitchell. I believe this was it NBA TV, Porter? It was a TV hit. Maybe it was a local Cleveland television station that was picked up on social, or maybe it was NBA TV.
Yeah, I think it was just some sort of press conference setting, scrum media setting on NBA TV during like a post practice or scrimmage.
Okay, all right. And before we catch a break, I also wanted to address this, because here's what Donovan Mitchell had to say earlier this week.
I don't think we thought it'd be this year. I think we thought we had more time. I mean, obviously, my dad works for the Mets. I'm a big Mets fan. I'm from New York. I'm very open about being around in New York. It's not like I'm just going to live my life. And if people make, speculations, that's how it's been for the past, 2.5 years. This year was a lot more louder than most. But I think as a group, it can wear on you. But I don't think it got to a point where we were like, all right, this is the last run. I think we were set on a goal to accomplish something, and ultimately we fell short. I don't think, I think a lot of the noise was louder on the outside than it was on the inside. But as a group, I really don't believe that we thought that this last year would be like, it. And we thought maybe some changes would be made, but we didn't know how, what. But I don't think we thought it'd be the end like that.
So there are a lot of things, and Donovan actually referenced this to start the interview when he said, my dad worked for the Mets, because I can remember I was the first person here locally to interview him. I was anchoring our draft night coverage, and as soon as the selection was made, they put Donovan on the phone with me, and I remember I texted Dennis Lindsay after the interview. I'm like, that kid is insanely polished. He said all the right things, just start to finish. And it's hard to know how authentic that is when essentially, as it was put to me, he has been trained and raised to be a professional athlete since he was young, and he started to show a lot of promise. Now, initially, he was a baseball player, right? He just referenced his thing with the Mets. And then as he started to grow, he's not super tall, but he is very long. He has big, long, padded hands. And his measurements indicated that if he leaned into the basketball stuff, maybe he could actually, initially, it was thought to be more of like a pit bull defensively, like a really good defensive guard. Even though he wasn't very big, he could really, really guard, move his feet. He's very athletic. And then as he evolved throughout the course of really just in the pros, he wasn't a great scorer in college. Remember, Dennis Lindsay found him playing for Rick Pitino at Louisville after their starting point guard got hurt. His name was Quinn Snyder. Quinn Snyder, Louisville starting point guard, goes down. Donovan, for about 5 games, plays point for Louisville and Pitino. Dennis Lindsay sees that, and to Dennis's credit forever, saw something that really, quite frankly, not many people did. He wasn't very highly thought of. Donovan himself didn't think he was ready for pro basketball. It was actually a conversation he had with Chris Paul, who was kind of his mentor. And Chris said, no, you're ready. Just enter the draft. Somebody's going to take you. But not a lot of people saw it. It's why he fell to mid-lottery. Jazz grabbed him. And, again, he said all the right things early on. A CAA guy with reps that leaked stories about Donovan at 4th of July parties. Oh, there's a car accident. Donovan's on the scene. I always juxtapose it to Gobert, who did everything in our community but was never talked about because Rudy just did his thing and vilified, which I still believe was bullying and extremely unfair. And so ultimately, Donovan was kind of beloved here until he wasn't. And so when I heard that this week, I'm calling extreme BS, because I don't think it will ever be known publicly just how much Donovan was driving the brick-by-brick breakdown of this group behind the scenes. Now, he was insulated because of his agency. He was insulated because these new superpower agencies are going to protect their clients to make sure that their Q rating is high, and Donovan's Q rating was high. But I can promise you, if Donovan thought there was more meat on that bone, he would have been around for a lot longer than he was. All right, we'll catch a quick break. Coming up on the other side, we're back to college football with Ross Dellinger. So keep it right here on ESPN 700.
Freshman Zamiah Vaughn matched up on Drake London right now. Let's see if they go his way. Turn and a give. Ingram. Oh, he's got the next. Make it Darwin Barlow, second level. And all the way down to the Utah 26-yard line. That's going to be another USC first down. He needed 6. He picked up 7. And they've got another good drive going here just outside the red zone at the 26-yard line.
Yeah, and all this is it's just kind of nickel and dime you, and this is where Keaton Slovis is at his best, and Utah's just got to play this a little bit more stout on these throws.
Vaughn matched up again with Drake London. Here's that area of the field where they like to throw jump balls to him. They'll shade a safety his way on 1st and 10 from the Utah 26-yard line. Slovis going to look to the sideline now, change the play as he gets it in from Graham Harrell. Barlow moves to his right-hand side. Utah showing pressure, and here they come. Handoff Barlow into the hole, jump cut, just past the 25 and down to about the 22. They're pushing the pile. It's still going inside the 20 and all the way down to the 18-yard line. He was stopped at the 23, and they pushed him forward for 5 more yards. And that's going to be second down and short now for USC. They'll go with tempo now. No subs on the field. They'll snap the ball and hand it again to Barlow straight ahead to the 15, down to the 14-yard line, and that's good for a first down. And they're in the red zone now and in business as USC, and they're not subbing here. They're going with tempo. Utah having to shuffle guys in and out pretty quickly here. As Slovis doesn't huddle up, he just looks to the sideline. First down and 10 USC. Clock running, 5:37 to play here in the first quarter. Scoreless for now. SC threatening right now. Barlow in the backfield. Tight end and 3 wide receivers here for USC. Now they shift into the pistol formation. Slovis now changing the play, turns around and tells Barlow. Takes the snap, turns and gives. Barlow straight ahead to the 10 and falls down right there after a 4-yard gain. Boy, if he kept his footing there, he might still be running.
Well, Utah's gone to a 3-man front. So they're like a 3-3, 3 linemen, 3 linebackers, and they had Devin Lloyd as an end. So it's kind of that. It was kind of what BYU did against Utah early on in the season, and it's kind of designed to, stop the run but also stop the pass. But it's more susceptible to the run.
Keep an eye on the jump ball to London here. First to make it second down for the 10-yard line of Utah. Slovis moves a man in motion across the formation. Takes the snap and drops to pass. Looking toward the corner of the end zone. Throws in the flat to Washington instead. And he's wrapped up and taken down behind the line of scrimmage. Nephi Sewell from his linebacker spot came up and made the stop on Taj Washington. That's going to bring up third down, and we'll call it about 8.
Yeah, great read here. This is it's just a designed kind of screen here out to Washington, but well read and well reacted by Nephi Sewell. Good to see him back healthy again.
Trojans are 1 out of 2 on third down here in the first quarter. Clock running at 4:10 to play here in the first quarter today here at the Coliseum. From the Utah 11-yard line, Slovis lines up 3 receivers right and 1 receiver. That's Drake London to the left. They'll shade a safety over to help. Barlow in the backfield. Slovis wants the snap, takes it, backpedals, pumps once, looking, pressure in his face, throws, incomplete, broken up, nearly intercepted by Utah. They were looking for Gary Bryant, and the pressure right up the middle came from Vimahi. Kelly Vimahi got right in the face of Keaton Slovis and forced the incompletion. That'll bring out the field goal team here for USC.
Yeah, very, very well done up front. I mean, that wasn't a pressure throw there, but a nice job. And of course, Reed also
All right, our Trevor Riley interview yesterday is getting a lot of attention. It was fun to catch up with Trev, who currently is in Hawaii at the Canoeing World Championships. It's a thing. Our next guest, one of my favorites, it's been a while, Ross Dellinger, one of the best college football writers out there on the show on a Thursday. Ross, happy Thursday, sir. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm well. Appreciate your time. So I wonder what your reaction is as this story has caught a lot of legs. So Trevor Riley, who played his college football here at the U, and I did a lot of radio with him before he kind of went into coaching, hops on yesterday, shares a bunch of different things, including that he made a trip to Saudi to try to get the Saudis to invest some of their funds that they've invested in other sports, including golf and soccer and racing, into some NIL initiatives for the University of Colorado. Ross, what's your reaction to this?
Yeah, it's. I can't say, I guess, that I'm surprised. Not surprised anymore by much of anything in college athletics. It seems to be changing rapidly, and in things that you maybe never would expect to happen have happened. So not shocked. I figured that a school, or at least a coach or collective, business person would at some point have at least a little foray into the Saudi situation. And so I certainly expected somebody to do it. And lo and behold, it happened. I think that the reaction to the story probably gives you an indication of what people think about this, which is probably they think that it's certainly unsavory at the least, in the fact that Trevor resigned probably tells you that this was something that at least a few people, if not everybody, at Colorado did not condone. So I'm curious of, for me, where it goes from here. Will others try to dabble in this? We know that private equity is probably going to find its way into college athletics fairly soon, with schools trying their best to generate new forms of revenue to distribute to athletes in this new revenue sharing world. So it'll be interesting to watch how that evolves.
Yes, certainly. And of course, we find ourselves around here as the home of the University of Utah, high speed ahead to a new experience in the Big 12. And before we get there, curious, Ross, as a guy who reads you and listens to the pod you do with your buddies, Dan Wetzel and Pat Forty as well. Coach Witt talks often, very candidly, about what he perceives to be the next move and seismic shift in college football. And when he says the things he says, it does not land well with Big 12 fans or BYU fans that kind of paint it as a we're too good for the Big 12 situation. That's not Kyle's point. But before we get to Utah's first year in the Big 12, what are your thoughts on what could be next in college football? Because we know the only constant with this sport has been change, and what it will look like. And I guess I'll use the term when the dust settles, if that's even a thing in college football anymore.
Well, we're in the middle of what will probably be about 11 months or so of interim type of period before this House settlement related new revenue sharing model begins. It's expected to kick in July 1, 2025. Schools will, at that point, be permitted to share a certain amount of revenue every year with their athletes. And from there, as you mentioned, there's always change. It won't stop there. Just like it hasn't stopped at just NIL. And before that, it didn't stop at just Alston payments, and before that, cost of attendance. So it's just more, right, and more. And I would assume that in the revenue sharing model, when this arrives, the next step will be more. It'll be more money to specifically football players, and it'll be some kind of probably collectively bargained agreement between schools or conferences in their football players. I would expect that that's the next world, and there's a price to that, obviously, and many schools can't pay that price, and so I think Kyle Whittingham has said this before, and so have plenty of others, is that there will be another break in a way within college athletics of those richer schools that can make those payments to athletes and can afford that breaking away. We're already going to have a break really between the Power Four and the Group of Five with the House settlement. Many Group of Five programs can't afford to share any revenue. So there'll be somewhat of a break there when it comes to payments, and then that will impact, obviously, what happens on the field. But there will probably be, like Coach Witt has said, another break, even from within the power leagues. It's 30, 40, 50 schools, who knows, that will probably separate themselves eventually.
Tell me, Ross, what you think the timeline is, because Coach Witt said, maybe 3-4 years, but of course there are media deals in place, and depending on the conference, it's different for each landing spot that might make this next seismic shift tough. But then lawyers want to get involved, certainly, and we've seen member institutions get out of deals, and we've seen litigation kind of move up timelines. Do you have a rough idea of when you think this, next seismic shift might happen?
These shifts are usually triggered by something, by some kind of policy change. I think, for instance, I think this gap that's continued to grow between the power conferences and the Group of Five, is rooted into many rules and policy changes that the courts have said college sports has to make. And those are like transfer rule changes, Alston payments, where schools can offer $6,000 to each athlete every year from the Supreme Court case. And then NIL is the latest version of that that's kind of separated the haves and the power leagues from the have-nots in the G5. And so the House settlement is going to be another trigger that further separates the groups and may even separate the schools within the power leagues. And I think another trigger is going to be, if it's not an employment model, athletes being deemed employees. That is something that some folks say is a probability, not just a possibility, but a probability or an inevitability. And that will be another trigger that'll probably separate, those 70 or so schools in the power leagues. So it just kind of depends on when those things happen, or if those things happen. The deeming athletes employees, which again could be one of those triggers, that could happen, I guess, within the next 2 or 3 years. But a lot of that actually has to do probably with the election in November. It's tied into politics and things like that as well. So it's very kind of unpredictable.
It is, and I'll continue to ask you questions that are just tough to answer, but you're as plugged in as anyone. And I wonder, Alabama, they re-signed their GM, Courtney Morgan, to a very lucrative deal. I wonder if this, Ross, to you indicates a change in how college football, I guess I'll call them front offices. I don't know what else to say. Are we going to see a different type of approach? Are schools going to start to have front offices like the pros, where there's a general manager and there's a president and there's a head of scout? Like, are we going to start to see more things like this, where big-time college football programs start to kind of formulate their, again, I'll just use the term front offices, that is going to start to look like the pro model?
I do. I do believe we will see more of that, and that's what happens when you have virtually a professional model. The House settlement allows for this revenue sharing, and even gives a salary cap, probably in the low 20 millions, mid to low 20 millions per year per school can spend on their athletes, can distribute that revenue to their athletes. And so you're paying athletes directly. You have a salary cap to keep. And that those kind of things certainly results in the hiring of front office type, general manager, capologist type folks in college football and in college sports. I think we will continue to see that, and the salaries will probably escalate as well for those who do that well, who can identify talent well, number one, and strategize on how to pay that talent and stay under the cap, but distribute the funds as best they can. It's similar to what we've had in the past. It's kind of a combination of a recruiting coordinator, which oftentimes assistant football coaches held that title. It's kind of like a recruiting coordinator mixed with a player personnel director, mixed with an NFL general manager. That's kind of what this new college GM is, and I think we'll see more and more. I mean, college athletics is evolving into a more professional model because the courts, Supreme Court, all the way up to the Supreme Court, have said you must distribute revenue and share revenue with the athletes at the top level of the sport. You're making too much to keep it and not share it, and so that's where we are.
All right, Ross, before I set you loose, as I referenced, we are the home of the Utes, and this is our first Big 12 experience. The media has picked Utah to win the Big 12. Vegas likes Utah to win the Big 12. Therefore, going to the CFP that's now expanded to 12. What's the Ross Dellinger take on the Utah Utes' first year in the Big 12? How do you think it plays out?
Well, the thing about the Big 12 is it's probably going to have just as much parity as any conference I've ever seen. It's just, I feel like the top 5, 6, maybe even many as 7 programs have a chance to win the league when you go down the list. Utah, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, even Arizona, Iowa State, West Virginia. I mean, I think these programs all have a shot to win the conference. And so, Utah, I know, returns a lot on defense. They'll be stacked there. They've got a few holes to replace offensively, but obviously they return Cam Rising, hope to keep him healthy. And it should be an interesting year that brings some unique matchups, right? They play at Oklahoma State, play at Houston, play, I think, down at UCF, I believe, to end the year on a Friday. So some unique and unusual kind of things we'll get here. And the big question for all of these teams that are kind of entering these new leagues is, can you handle the kind of the travel, and 2, just the unfamiliarity with some of these programs? How do you adjust to a new conference?
Ross, thanks for the time. Keep up the good work with all you do with the pod and, of course, your written stuff as well. Love to have you back on soon, okay?
Sure, Gus. Thanks.
All right, Ross Dellinger. You can get him on Twitter. At Ross Dellinger is where you find him. He's moved over to Yahoo Sports. My man sounded like he needed a little bit of coffee, a little cold brew, a little Diet Coke. I wonder if it's been a long day for our guy. All right, Gordon Monson, Craig Bullerjack live in studio. I want to remind you guys, do you live or work in a building with an elevator that just doesn't seem to cooperate and just loves to inconvenience you on a regular basis? Well, do your property or building manager a favor. Tell them to call Metro Elevator, Utah's preferred vertical transportation experts. That's 801-946-7003, 801-946-7003. Our good friends at Metro Elevator. Big show, big hour comes your way next right here on ESPN 700.
And Nephi Sewell out with the ankle injury. Corrine Reed in for him. That last run by Keontae Ingram went for 28 yards. He's out of the game. Darwin Barlow in here. 1st and 10 from the Utah 47. 4-wide look here for SC and Slovis. He'll pass. Pressure coming off the edge. He tries to dump it off to Barlow, and it's deflected. Devin Lloyd got a piece of it. He was blitzing off that edge and got a piece of that ball before it could get to Barlow. Incomplete.
Yeah, and these are the plays you got to get. You got to make Slovis uncomfortable. It's a screen here. Great job by Devin, anticipating just at the right time to knock the ball down.
2nd down and 10 from the Utah 47. Just underway here. 14:56 to play in the second quarter. Utah 7, USC 3. They'll move London into the right slot. 3 receivers to the right now. Barlow stays in the ball game. Slovis stays in the shotgun. They motion Drake London to the inside. That's going to be a run every time. Barlow bounces to the outside. He breaks a tackle, dodges another, and picks up 4 yards to the Utah 43. That'll bring up 3rd down and 6.
And I know USC's running the ball a little bit here, but their mantra really is to throw it. That's what they know. That's
they never stick with it.
They don't.
They'll run it on you a little bit, but at the end of the day, they're going to go back to that pass.
And the answer against this defense is to run.
1 out of 3 on 3rd down are the Trojans. They got to get to the Utah 37. Slovis in the gun. Will Utah bring pressure this time? Yes, they will, and here they come. Slovis to the outside, too easy. Finds Washington inside the 35 and down to the 31. Utah was playing way off, and that was an easy pitch and catch of 12 yards and a 1st down.
Yeah, and USC just hasn't thrown the ball that long. You got to see that defensively, and with the motion, it kind of messed Utah up just a little bit defensively because Malone Mataele should have played that tighter than he did.
So 1st and 10 for the Utah 31-yard line. Slovis stays in the shotgun here on 1st and 10. Brings a man in motion across the formation. That's Gary Bryant. He'll drop the pass again. Plenty of time now. Steps up away from the pressure. Hit from behind and taken down. Sacked all the way back at the 37-yard line. Mika Tafua circled back around and wrapped up Slovis and took him down.
But if you see Slovis, he doesn't want to scramble. He wants to sit and live in that pocket. I mean, he just doesn't want to get out, and that's really good for Utah. Great job by Mika to just keep at it and keep with him.
Utah doing a really good job getting pressure with 4 and 5 men. They're not having to bring a lot of bodies, are they?
No, and that's helpful, and then they can cover down the field.
Here we go, 2nd down, and we'll call it 16 all the way back at the 37-yard line. Slovis in the pistol formation, checking with his receivers on the outside. Turns and gives to Ingram, who's going to be wrapped up and stacked up back at the 40-yard line. Oh, man, they're going to give him the 39. He didn't even reach the 39-yard line. It'll be a loss of 2 yards. Xavier Carlton came in to wrap him up and take him down. 3rd down and long coming up.
Yeah, good to see from Xavier. Just real athletic, real aggressive here, actually getting there. And he's playing from the inside. So Xavier's not a tackle. This is that different look by Utah, and he just beats the guard to the inside.
Clark Phillips is going to see Drake London on 3rd down and 18. Slovis wants the snap, takes it. Here it comes, 4-man rush. Nobody open right now, throws it to the outside. Oh, he's got him! London at the 20. He needed 18, and he picked up 20 yards. He was standing all by himself.
Yeah, and Clark Phillips kind of got nosy to the inside there because there's no way in the world that ball should be completed, and Utah just gave Keaton Slovis way too much. I don't know if he caught that, though, but way too much time to throw that ball.
I'm not sure he caught it in the NFL. I'm pretty sure he caught it in college, though.
Just like he was kind of juggling it as he went out of bounds.
Inside the red zone for a 2nd time today go the Trojans from the Utah 19-yard line. Ingram the back of the backfield, Slovis to pass again, throws to the outside, complete to London. Phillips comes up quickly to make the tackle. It'll be about a 5, maybe 6-yard gain. Where will they mark it? They'll give him the 13, so that's a 6-yard gain on 1st down. And that's the pass they've gone to a bunch here today.
Yeah, and Clark Phillips is just way off. I mean, he's on it here, but they'll take this all day long if you give it to him.
2nd down and 4 from the Utah 13-yard line for the Trojans. Down 7-3 here, early second quarter. Slovis with Ingram. He'll turn and give it to Keontae Ingram, who's stacked up again behind the line of scrimmage. Malone Mataele was there, but it was Devin Lloyd who wrapped him up and took him down, and Devin's having a great game here early.
Yeah, Devin's playing from a different spot. I mean, he's playing that kind of stand-up outside linebacker, defensive end player here, and he can kind of roam and play, gets off the block, and does a nice job of getting the back in the backfield.
Malapei in 3 of 5 on 3rd down to the Trojans. They're 3rd and 8 right now. Slovis brings a man in motion across the formation. Here comes Utah. Slovis, pressure coming to him. He's going to duck, he's going to look, he's going to run, he's going to throw. Incomplete! He tried to force it into London, make it Kromenhoek his tight end, and Vontae Davis was there to knock it away. Incomplete. That'll bring up 4th down.
Yeah, big win here for Utah, but on the last couple of throws, Slovis has had plenty of time to throw the ball. They just got to find a way to get home here with these 4 guys and getting a push in the pocket, but they're just not quite getting to it.
For 15 years, the Big Show dominated the Utah Sports Talk airwaves. First, it was Craig Bolerjack and Gordon Monson, followed by Spence Checketts and Monson. Now, all 3 are reunited on The Drive. It's time for the Big Show Hour on The Drive with Spence Checketts, exclusively on ESPN 700.
Your Thursday is about to get so much better, so much better. We've had a fun show, but a little bit of an energy lag with a couple of guests that didn't work out, but we're back. We're back. Craig Bolerjack, Gordon Monson, live in studio and live on YouTube. Are you guys ready to be blasted out to the world?
You know, we just talked about the day we thought about what if, and it's happened.
Yeah,
what if we streamed, and here it is, red lights on.
The only problem with this whole setup is that Bowler gets real nervous in front of a camera.
Yeah, this might be his first time. Yeah, that's true. Unnatural.
Where do I look?
Well, here
and you know what, though, Spence? It may also force Gordon to he's pretty color coordinated, but he's going to have to up his game just a bit.
That's at this point, Bowler.
No, forget it.
We're not expecting much other than what he's been his entire career, which is why we love you, Gordo.
Yeah, that's it, baby. But you know what? The blue sailfish and the blue shirt, white shorts. You just got off the beach. You look good.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Were you on the beach?
No.
He looks like it.
In my mind.
Yeah.
You know.
You've always been able to match the hat and the shirt. You've always had that. I'll give you that.
Yeah, the trick is not to make it too matchy.
Oh, okay.
You see, but you know, but here me giving fashion tips, I don't think so.
Yeah, here at ESPN 700, we like to be ahead of the trends. So we'll see if this YouTube thing has legs. I think we're the first on the platform. But anyway, Bowler Monson brought to you by Big O Tires. It is the Big Show Hour here on the Drive. Healthy car special, $59.95 right now. Anyway, they do everything, so you should just go to bigotires.com to find a location near you. All right, I want to do some football, but before we do that, we have 2 former Jazzmen this week with some mea culpas, okay? We have Gordon Hayward, who once upon a time ruined all of our July 4th back in 2017.
Yes, he did.
Going on John Paul's podcast, JP's podcast. Shout out to JP, Roundball Roundup. Bowler, we'll start with you. He actually said out loud, the most fun I ever had in my NBA career was my final year in Utah. Day late, dollar short for some Jazz fans, but at least he finally said it.
You know, you never know what happens when you step out of the spotlight and you realize the career is over. You've seen a lot of players do this, no matter what sport it may be. They finally have let the curtain down, Spence and Gordo. I mean, they finally feel like they can talk without it costing them. Does that make sense? Or making a bad play with the media. It's great to see people talk truth and what their true feelings are. Gordon, I know you're a proponent. When you interview people, man, open up, let me know, give it to me. And I'm the same way. When you sit down with someone, it's amazing what they want to talk about, because I really believe most people have a story. And Gordo obviously has one. But for him to open up like that, I thought JP did a marvelous job. Let it breathe, let him talk. But it surprises me a bit. You know, sometimes we got this feeling that, man, the angst was just too much for him, and that, you know, he couldn't wait to exit stage left. And all of a sudden you find out behind the scenes, maybe, again, it goes back to what I said last week. Boozer, D. Will, now Hayward. Best times of my career, Utah Jazz. And it's amazing, isn't it? It's amazing. They go someplace else looking for what? Gordo, grandeur,
something, glory.
Their face on a large, you know, downtown New York on a billboard selling something. for millions of dollars? That's what their agents say that really is the key to success. In reality, it's not. Well, they love their time here.
Bowler, Spence, our kids are all grown now.
Yeah.
So we've been through that process. My daughters advised me that perhaps I should back off on giving advice. So I have. But we could see this. We've seen it, like you said, Bowler, over and over again. If you could go back in time and tell Gordon Hayward, hey, this place is pretty nice, and it's set up for you, you might not feel that way, even though you think you will, even though you want to go play for your college coach. No, this is a good setup. Enjoy it. Take advantage of it.
Hard
Live
to go
it.
back.
But you can't. Nobody's listening. Nobody's listening.
No.
I got the YouTube channel pulled up. The lighting looks good on you, Gord. I'm impressed. And Craig obviously is natural. So ultimately,
Let me get the hat there. There we go.
Remember that woman outside of where was that, Bowler?
I don't know.
The gal at the old Coliseum down there in L.A.
Oh, is this the Wes Ruff story?
Yeah, I love that story. It's so tell the story.
No. You'd have to call Wes. Wes tells it as good as anybody.
They're coming into the arena, and there's a woman there checking the credentials and whatnot. And Wes said some sort of remark, and she turned and looked at Bowler. Bedroom eyes, really.
Oh, yeah?
That's,
Okay. All right.
He's a married man, though.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Wes's ego was totally deflated on that one, Bowler.
It was crazy. I think he said something like, "Well, what about me?" And she goes, "You're blocking my view."
Oh, man.
And Wes just crumbled like butter on a grill.
Oh, that's rough. That's rough. But it's tough to keep up with Dimples. With Dimples Bowler over here.
Spence has it going on.
Sure, he does.
Remember, Spence? People used to say that you looked like. Who was it that they said? Oh, what's his name?
Bradley Cooper.
Yeah, Bradley Cooper, and who's the other one?
Brad Pitt, probably. I can't remember off the top of my head.
You know what? I've always said his dad looks like Robert Palmer.
He does.
Oh, yeah.
It's spooky.
My favorite is Shooter McGavin.
That's good too.
Because and he hates it. And real quick, we'll get back to it. But we were at an you got to hear the story. My father can't stand it because I've always said, reminds me of Shooter McGavin, and he hates it. We were at an airport once, and we go through PSA, and this guy's like, "Shooter McGavin!" I was like, "Yes, rule."
Got the yellow coat.
I know the other one, Sean McVay.
I did get McVay a lot. Yeah. I did get Sean McVay.
So look, that's good company.
I'll take it. Yeah. What about you? Didn't you used to want us to say Robert Redford?
Well, yeah, but
and then really it was Gary Busey.
But when you're in college,
but it was I got Nicolas Cage a little bit.
There you go.
In college, though, I mean, I've seen some videos on the football field that you were being chased by multiple young ladies.
Yeah, going on back then.
Back then, that was a long, long time ago.
It's impossible that you were anything other than attractive because of who you married. There's no way you were some ugly dude because you married a 10.
Well,
in Lisa.
she was in a slump, I think.
Rough time for Lisa.
Could have been. It was. You know what it was?
Yeah.
It was a bounce back.
Oh. You're going to hurt our guy.
Now, wait. I just fell on the floor here. Hey, you guys, Britta and Sharon, tens all around.
Yeah. Certainly. All right, let's see if I can get this back on track.
Sorry.
Because, no, you're fine. I love the Gordon non sequiturs. But what I've always said about the Hayward stuff, look, these guys are the best in the world at what they do. And as athletes, you're like the only person that you excel to be the greatest in the world, and we say you live here now, right? Most people, if they excel to the top of their profession, they can move to where they want to move because they're that good at what they do, but athletes are the exception. So, okay, you earn free agency. All right, you want to live somewhere else, that's your right. That's the way this thing is set up. It's the way it's collectively bargained. You earn free agency. You want Boston, fine. Say something, dude.
All right.
Open your freaking mouth because Kevin O'Connor was even able to get a trade exception in the Boozer deal that he used to get Al Jefferson. This. We were told by the Jazz front office that they felt like there was a framework of a deal in place for them to get a little draft capital in Jay Crowder.
Yep.
Because Jay was with Boston at the time. So if Gordon would have gone to Dennis and say, look, thanks. Guys drafted me. Quinn's been great. Developed an all-star. I want to go play for Brad. I want to live in Boston. Then Dennis calls Danny and say, let's make a deal. And then the Jazz get something for him. Like, the anecdotes are fine. Call Gale. We were all sad. Yes, handle your exit better. But more than anything else, I'm a results guy. Give the team who drafted you and helped you become a multimillionaire and an all-star a heads up so they can get something in return. That's always been my favorite thing.
Coached him up big time, Spence. It helped him with his game. And that was obvious in what we saw on the floor. So, yeah, that will always be baffling to me. It almost seemed like it was purposeful, on his part. And I don't know if it was.
You don't know what happens behind the scenes and what kind of just boils Gordon, for months, weeks, years, or whatever it may be. But you could always sense, and I go back to this all the time, he didn't want to be the centerpiece of any franchise, in my opinion. I mean, I think that the stress, the pressure is for just an elite few.
Wasn't built for it.
Yeah. And even though he had the incredible run in the NCAA for Butler, that still is kind of foreign territory for most. And then you get this almost, hey, look what he did. He's a leader. Well, maybe in reality not. And so the Jazz were hoping he would develop into that, but he was always saying, you know what, yeah, I'm trying to move that way. And I think, again, fans liked him. They liked his development. The Jazz did a marvelous job developing him into an all-star. But I think what will always hang on his head are things that he could have controlled, Spence, real easy. And, again, I don't know who was, in control at that time. Parents, wife, agent to do what he did. But I think simple thank yous go a hell of a long way, especially with the Miller family. Gail's there by herself after Larry's passing, and for him to just kind of exit stage left, and you're right, without a trade exception to go with it. Basically, the development of Gordon Hayward, there was no payoff. There was nothing in return. Maybe a simple thank you would have gone a long way.
It's a death sentence if you draft a player and he develops into an all-star and he walks and you are left with nothing. It's a miracle that Dennis turned this thing around in 2 years, developing Gobert, drafting Mitchell. They're back in the playoffs. Most teams, certainly in smaller cities, you strike gold, you draft the right guy, you get him for 7 years, he turns into an all-star, and then you wake up one day and he's gone and you have nothing in return, Gordon. That's a death sentence.
Yeah, it is.
Can I say something real quick? I was in Boston, and someone very close to Gordon pulled me aside and said, "You think we can come back?" And I was floored. And I go, well, that's, again, out of my pay range, but here you know who to call if that's what you're thinking.
Boy, that'd be humble pie a little bit.
A little bit, right? But I was surprised, though, that the person really was probably speaking somewhat for Gordon because what he thought, I think, when somebody goes back in time and tries to relive their college life, or where you grew up and you go back and the roads aren't the same and the houses have all fallen down or they've been rebuilt or given a facelift, and you go, woo, it's not what it was. And maybe that's, again, for a multimillionaire, you think, we can handle anything. But in reality, you still got the human side. And I just wonder if he felt like, you know what, this isn't what I thought it would be.
I like what you said, Spence, about guys getting to a point where they earn their free agency. They can go.
Yeah,
they can go do their things, and that's fine. It's just that you wish sometimes guys would, and these are young people, even at that point, you wish that they could sort of have some insight into what they were doing. And I'm not sure he really knew. He wanted to go play for Brad, and that's fine. He thought he did. But then when he got there, of course, the injury happened, and that was a kick in the teeth for him. But if he knew then what he knows now, I think he would have stayed.
I think it's probably safe to say, and as Craig mentioned, I think, Darren has said as much. D-Will has said as much. One more thing here, then I want to get over to Donovan's comments that he made this week. Ryan and his group, they've been very intentional at honoring past players and coaches. Last year, I don't know how much of this is like, hey, we're not going to be very good at basketball, so come to 90s night, which is fine. That's what you got to do. So, Craig, I'll start with you. Then, Gordon, I want to get your thoughts. If they have Gordon back,
yes.
If there's a Gordon Hayward night at the Delta Center this year, and Dan Roberts said, Jazz fans, I can't do it. Dan he has the best voice in the world. I can't do it, Dan, but if Dan says, Jazz fans, welcome number 20, Gordon Hayward. He walks out to midcourt. What's that building sound like?
Oh, this would be a moment, I think, that some have forgiven, and we've read this on Twitter or, on this show. We've talked about it. I think it goes 70-30 boos, because that's what fans do. They have the right. They're disappointed. There was a great love affair with him that he forgot. And I really think it'd be a 70-30 split. Others would look at each other like, come on, grow up. It's over. It's in the past. But no, man, I tell you, that's what fandemonium or fandom fans are about. They're fanatics. And if you, it's rare that you can embrace a former player who walked out without saying goodbye, right? And I tell you what, to Ryan's credit, as we talked about before, D. Will's willingness to tell Jerry, I'm sorry, and for that to become public when Jerry was really nearing the end has gone a long way in Darren's reattachment to this franchise. And I tell you, when I saw him during the documentary 2 weeks ago, he's relieved. He is relieved. That was a horrible thing to carry on your back. And I got a feeling as Gordon now sits in retirement, he may have that same feeling brewing quickly.
Let me make an analogy here, fellas, so it makes it clear.
See the look on his face?
See, Bowler, back when you were in college.
Here we go.
You were jilted by a number of lovers back then.
Why are we going back here?
Because there's a thin line between love and hate.
Ah, okay.
You see?
Yeah.
And like you said, Bowler, the Jazz fans love this guy. They poured their hearts out for this guy. And there the lover goes the other way.
Okay.
And, and I put it at more 60-40 boos to cheers. I don't think it would be as severe as you say, Bowler. Maybe. Who knows? But time heals stuff sometimes.
Yeah, it does.
Who reaches out first? Quincy Lewis, by the way, former Jazz player who now really is involved with alumni relations, who's done a marvelous job to reconnect Boos and D. Will and Memo, AK, and so many others. Griff, Dantley. Who thought Dantley would come back and embrace his franchise?
Pieces of silver.
So you guys know, and I had a front row seat. This was the first time I had heard the name David Falk, which I heard often over the years as he represented Patrick Ewing. But the AD, my dad, Frank stuff, if that can be repaired, the Hayward thing can be repaired.
Yeah.
That was ugly.
Yeah. It takes time, and time is passing, and you wonder if Quincy and Ryan, their next goal in mind is to bring him back. It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm all for healing wounds, man.
Sure.
Because what was good. What happened wasn't the best of partings, but people make mistakes, and, can you forgive and move on? Some people can, some people can't. So I'd like to, if Gordon's mentally, what's the word I want to use? Is, when as a player, he was questioned about his mental fortitude. What's he like emotionally now? Could he stand in front of 20 thou and take it one way or the other to start the repair?
And does he want to?
Yeah,
right?
does
he
want
made
to?
like $350 million for one All-Star appearance, so he could just be like, "Hey, I'm good." Does he want to come back? I think is an interesting thing to consider.
It is. I'm not sure how much JP dove into that subject, but I'm glad he at least got part of it out of him. And then of course, Donovan. That was an interesting convo as well, Spence. My gosh.
I want to get to Donovan real quick, but one more thing, because Gordon, you remember, we had Mark Bartlestein on our show like 2 weeks after he left. Remember that?
Yeah.
I don't know that if they're so. My niece Abby just left to serve a mission. There's a reason I'm bringing it up, because I hate Facebook. I can't stand it. But we all found out that her mission was going to allow her to communicate with us through Facebook. So I had to refire up my Facebook page. And when I checked it after being back on for a week, I had 3 requests for the Bartlestein sound. Like, do you still have that anywhere?
Interesting.
Because that got heated. You remember we had him on the show, and it got pretty heated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, it gets back. It's not just. I wrote a column after Gordon Hayward left that ripped him pretty hard. And the folks back in Boston didn't like it, and they came after me a little bit. But it's not just the fact that he wanted to go somewhere else. It was what you said earlier, Spence. It was the way he did it and the way he stiffed the Jazz. I mean, like Dad used to say, and Bowler, I know the lieutenant or sergeant.
The
sergeant used to tell you this back in Kansas or Missouri. Where was it?
Both.
There's a right way and a wrong way to do things. And sometimes those things are flexible, and not every right way is the same. Not every wrong way is the same. But in Gordon Hayward's case, it was the wrong way. And the same thing with Darren. They handled business the wrong way. And if you can correct that as you mature and get better thinking, get better minded, then I think folks here would have to forgive.
D. Will is in that mindset because, again, during the night of Q&A after the documentary, he said that himself, that I'm now a grown man. I get myself. I made horrible mistakes with my attitude. And, when you get out of school and you're the number 3 pick in the draft and then Sloan makes you wait your turn, you got sideways. And you know what? He never recovered from that. The anger persisted during his entire, tenure with the Jazz and Jerry Sloan.
Yep.
Think about it, though, Bowler. Think about his background. I sat down and talked with D. Will for probably 4 hours. I did a 3-part series feature on the guy.
When are we still here?
And, yeah.
All right.
This was back when he was playing for the Jazz.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I mean, the background he gave me for that explained a lot. I mean, his dad deserted he and his mom, and that made him angry. He was a wrestler. And you know how wrestlers are, Bowler. You've interviewed wrestlers. That mindset is really unique. I mean, it is aggressive. It is take no prisoners. It is, hey, I'm in charge here, and I'm going to make the best of this, and I'm going to win. And that was kind of his makeup. And so I usually, even back then, I appreciated his forthrightness at times, his anger at times, because I thought that's what made him a great competitor. But sometimes you cross the line a little bit, and he did on a number of occasions. I remember asking him how he felt about the Lakers back then, and he said, I hate them. He just flat out said, I hate them. How many players say that? Not that many.
Very few, because, again, the wrath or that comment filters throughout the NBA, and then what do you have, right?
Yeah.
But that's what he feels inside. And in a world where we deal with a lot of athletes, Spence, and I know you've been on both sides of this, both seeing how it works from a management standpoint and how it works from a media standpoint, so many guys are so careful. They don't want to reveal who they really are because they don't want to put themselves in any kind of hazard zone. And D. Will, he got himself in a bit of a hazard zone, but it wasn't because he was afraid to speak his mind. And you had to respect that to some extent.
Excellent segue.
He blew off 3 down.
Yeah, I did. Excellent segue, though, because I do want to get some football in. So we're going to catch a break, and we'll do a big segment on football. Gordon, you've been writing a lot about the Utes and BYU. But I want to do a couple of minutes on Donovan because you reference guys that are careful because they don't want people to know exactly what's going on. And I can remember, I talked about this earlier, I was the first media member to interview Donovan on our market because I was with the Jazz anchoring draft night coverage. He gets drafted. Garduno puts him on the phone, and I spend 10 minutes with him. And after the interview, I texted Dennis. I'm like, that kid is polished. I don't know why, because I didn't know anything about his background. Then we find out his dad works for the Mets. He gets the deal, gets the game, and as soon as Donovan started to show some promise, his dad trained him. This is how you communicate with people. And he was insanely polished. Always said the right thing. So this week, on a TV hit, Donovan alluded to the fact that he felt like they had plenty left in the tank here, and it was a little early to pull the ripcord. Dude, if you felt that way, you'd still be here. Okay?
I totally agree.
Let's say it how it is, Donovan, okay? Because ultimately, I don't think anybody, well, Craig probably has insight in this, but that team, that iteration of Jazz basketball, and I do think the ownership change was part of this because Dennis and Quinn didn't want to work for the new ownership group for whatever reason. That's their business, not mine. The brick-by-brick crumbling started when Donovan decided he didn't want to live here anymore, right? So I'm sorry, Donovan. Thanks for the TV hitting the soundbite, but I am not buying 1 minute of what he had to say this week because if he thought there was meat on that bone, Gordon, Donovan Mitchell would still live here and play for the Jazz.
He would have expressed that, and ownership and management would have said, okay.
Yeah.
Because he was a star player.
Right.
And he was the Jazz's. And we've talked about this a lot in the past, guys, but I remember going up, and I've mentioned this and written about it, but I went up to Donovan in that early first season when he was the man. And I said to him, Donovan, with all this adulation you're getting and all this attention you're getting and the stardom that's coming your way, are you going to turn into a beep?
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at me and he said, no, because my mom would kill me.
Right.
Well, I think he lost his fear a little bit.
Yeah.
Because there were things that were happening with Donovan on the court and off the court here that were unfortunate. One is the way he was trying to play was outside his realm at that time. And if you talk to the coaches, they'll tell you that, I mean, at times he thought he was something he wasn't. And he didn't always play within what the team wanted to have done. And maybe he looked around and said, well, I have a better chance of making a basket than you do, so I'm just going to take this, you know. But he's not Damian Lillard. He wasn't at that time, and yet he thought he was.
Right.
He wanted to play in New York in front of mom and dad and friends and family. I'll make this quick because I know you got to hit a break. Bottom line, in my opinion, too, is that Darren, during the bubble and Black Lives Matter and Say Her Name and
You mean Donovan?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what did I say?
You said Darren.
Sorry.
Sorry.
And JC would put peace on the back of his jersey, you know, because that's really, truly who he is and what he believes. That at that time, you remember there was a legislator here in Utah who took him to task.
Stuart Adams.
Which was ugly.
It was
embarrassing.
ugly. And you know what? It was, and I think that was the deciding factor about the black and white Utah. Don't tell me about who I am, where I come from, or the history of African Americans. And if that's a moment in time, that statement, I think, flipped the switch saying, you know what? I've done all I can. I know the fans love me and I love them, but it's not going to change. And I really believe that was really another piece of the departure and the crack.
Certainly.
Along with Rudy and COVID, and maybe Quinn did lose the locker room and the language went left. Again, Quinn only knows. But it was not pretty that last year after they had the best record in the NBA.
Yeah, and that's a very fair and good point. And ultimately, all of that is correct. But don't go on TV and be like, oh, I really wish we had another shot. If you did, you'd still be here, pal. There's just no doubt.
I mean, I agree with that back then, and maybe I think that now, but he didn't.
Yeah.
And so for him to say he did or does.
All right, let's get to Ryan from the Dish Pros. Guys, 1 week away. Utah football plays in 1 week. 801-424-DISH. Get your television watching experience dialed in. What's going on, Ryan?
This is the time. Call us up now. Take advantage of these deals. Guys, we can get you the best TV system, get you all the games, and the best DVR. That's what it's about. You want to have the best experience. Dish can do that, and the best price when you call us. Call us up today. I've got little extras we can throw in. Dinner at JCW's if you call and get set up today. Plus, we'll also throw in the multi-sports pack, which includes a ton of cool channels. But the best one in that pack is the NFL
Levi
Red
Sewell
Zone.
out with the ankle injury. Corinne
For
Reed in for him that last
Call
run
us
by
up, get upgraded,
Keontae Ingram
get the
went for
bigger
28
DVR.
yards. He's out of the game. Darwin Barlow in here. 1st and 10 from the Utah 47. 4 wide look here for SC and Slovis. He'll pass. Pressure coming off the edge. He tries to dump it off to Barlow, and it's deflected. Devin Lloyd got a piece of it. He was blitzing off that edge and got a piece of that ball before it could get to Barlow. Incomplete.
Yeah, and these are the plays you got to get. You got to make Slovis uncomfortable. It's a screen here. Great job by Devin, anticipating just at the right time to knock the ball down.
2nd down and 10 from the Utah 47. Just underway here. 14:56 to play in the second quarter. Utah 7, USC 3. They'll move London into the right slot. 3 receivers to the right now. Barlow stays in the ball game. Slovis stays in the shotgun. They motion Drake London to the inside. That's going to be a run every time. Barlow bounces to the outside. He breaks a tackle, dodges another, and picks up 4 yards to the Utah 43. That'll bring up 3rd down and 6.
And I know USC's running the ball a little bit here, but their mantra really is to throw it. That's what they know. That's
Well, they never
are.
stick with it.
They don't.
They'll run it on you a little bit, but at the end of the day, they're going to go back to that pass.
And the answer against this defense is to run.
1 out of 3 on 3rd down are the Trojans. They got to get to the Utah 37. Slovis in the gun. Will Utah bring pressure this time? Yes, they will, and here they come. Slovis to the outside, too easy. Finds Washington inside the 35 and down to the 31. Utah was playing way off, and that was an easy pitch and catch of 12 yards and a 1st down.
Yeah, and USC just hasn't thrown the ball that long. You got to see that defensively, and with the motion, it kind of messed Utah up just a little bit defensively because Malone Mataele should have played that tighter than he did.
So 1st and 10 for the Utah 31-yard line. Slovis stays in the shotgun here on 1st and 10. Brings a man in motion across the formation. That's Gary Bryant. He'll drop the pass again. Plenty of time now. Steps up away for the pressure. Hit from behind and taken down. Sacked all the way back at the 37-yard line. Mika Tafua circled back around and wrapped up Slovis and took him down.
But if you see Slovis, he doesn't want to scramble. He wants to sit and live in that pocket. I mean, he just doesn't want to get out, and that's really good for Utah. Great job by Mika to just keep at it and keep with him.
Utah doing a really good job getting pressure with 4 and 5 men. They're not having to bring a lot of bodies, are they?
No, and that's helpful, and then they can cover down the field.
Here we go, 2nd down, and we'll call it 16 all the way back at the 37-yard line. Slovis in the pistol formation, checking with his receivers on the outside. Turns and gives to Ingram, who's going to be wrapped up and stacked up back at the 40-yard line. Oh, man, they're going to give him the 39. He didn't even reach the 39-yard line. It'll be a loss of 2 yards. Xavier Carlton came in to wrap him up and take him down. 3rd down and long coming up.
Yeah, good to see from Xavier. Just real athletic, real aggressive here, actually getting there. And he's playing from the inside. So Xavier's not a tackle. This is that different look by Utah, and he just beats the guard to the inside.
Clark Phillips is going to see Drake London on 3rd down and 18. Slovis wants the snap, takes it. Here it comes, 4-man rush. Nobody open right now, throws it to the outside. Oh, he's got him! London at the 20. He needed 18, and he picked up 20 yards. He was standing all by himself.
Yeah, and Clark Phillips kind of got nosy to the inside there because there's no way in the world that ball should be completed, and Utah just gave Keaton Slovis way too much. I don't know if he caught that, though, but way too much time to throw that ball.
I'm not sure he caught it in the NFL. I'm pretty sure he caught it in college, though.
Just like he was kind of juggling it as he went out of bounds.
Inside the red zone for a 2nd time today go the Trojans from the Utah 19-yard line. Ingram the back of the backfield, Slovis to pass again, throws to the outside, complete to London. Phillips comes up quickly to make the tackle. It'll be about a 5, maybe 6-yard gain. Where will they mark it? They'll give him the 13, so that's a 6-yard gain on 1st down. And that's the pass they've gone to a bunch here today.
Yeah, and Clark Phillips is just way off. I mean, he's on it here, but they'll take this all day long if you give it to him.
2nd down and 4 from the Utah 13-yard line for the Trojans. Down 7-3 here, early 2nd quarter. Slovis with Ingram. He'll turn and give it to Keontae Ingram, who's stacked up again behind the line of scrimmage. Malone Mataele was there, but it was Devin Lloyd who wrapped him up and took him down, and Devin's having a great game here early.
Yeah, Devin's playing from a different spot. I mean, he's playing that kind of stand-up outside linebacker, defensive end player here, and he can kind of roam and play, gets off the block, and does a nice job of getting the back in the backfield.
Malapei in 3 of 5 on 3rd down to the Trojans. They're 3rd and 8 right now. Slovis brings a man in motion across the formation. Here comes Utah. Slovis, pressure coming to him. He's going to duck, he's going to look, he's going to run, he's going to throw. Incomplete! He tried to force it into London, make it Cromanhoke his tight end, and Vontae Davis was there to knock it away. Incomplete. That'll bring up 4th down.
Yeah, big win here for Utah, but on the last couple of throws, Slovis has had plenty of time to throw the ball. They just got to find a way to get home here with these 4 guys and getting a push in the pocket, but they're just not quite getting to it.
Parker Lewis this time from 34 yards away, 10 for 10 on the year. Lewis's field goal, it's turfed a bit, and he missed it. Apparently Parker Lewis can lose. He misses that one wide right, and the Utah defense stands up big.
Field goal was unsuccessful. Timeout on the field.
10:41 to play here in the first half. Utah will get the ball back, leading 7-3.
Get a healthy car special for $59.95, which includes a conventional oil change, checks on alignments, brakes, batteries, and more. Big O Tires are good friends. They've got 50 locally owned and operated locations in Utah. You can visit BigOTires.com to find a location near you. And Big O Tires brings you the Big Show Big Hour with the only 3 hosts that were on the Big Show. Let's be very clear. It was your baby first, Craig Buller, Jack Gordon Monson. Then I had imposter syndrome after sitting in for Craig for a while. But we were the 3 guys, right?
There's only one Spence Checketts.
That's right.
Well, that's nice of you to say.
But by the way, Porter, for a younger guy, he's got great musical taste. I'd say, you can't beat the Beatles.
You know, I was thinking the other day, you guys said, what was the best Beatles album? You picked what I didn't think you would pick. I thought the White Album was the bomb.
A lot of people like the White Album. A lot of people like Revolver. A lot of people like Sgt. Pepper. I went with Abbey Road. Spence, what's your opinion on
Revolver. I'm a Revolver guy.
Okay.
But ultimately, you can't go wrong. I'm a big Beatles fan, as the 2 of you are. I'm also a big fan of college football. It's called a segue, huh?
Nice.
Beautifully done.
Gordo, you've been all over it, man. You've been writing a lot. And there's palpable buzz for Utah football. Picked to win the Big 12 by the media and by Vegas. Joel Klatt today on his podcast picked Utah as the 3 seed in the CFP because he thinks Miami's going to win the ACC and they'll be the 4 seed. How does this work? How does it go down? What does Utah football have to do to win the Big 12 and go to the CFP now that it's expanded to 12 teams?
I'll say it this way. I'm not even sure they need to win the Big 12. They could still get in if they lost that championship game. But this team is talented. It's loaded. The coaches are all over it. They know they have something special. And the coaches aren't talking much about it. But Kyle Whittingham, who usually likes to play the role of the underdog, he can't hit that note very hard now because he knows what they have. And the one thing is, Spence, the first time that you were on the radio, or Bowler, the first time you were broadcasting a game, when you do something for the first time, sometimes there's a little slippage here and there. And the Utes playing in the Big 12 for the first time, new stadiums, new fan bases, new experiences, new travel. They will travel the second most miles, I think, of all the teams in the Big 12. You might slip up here and there, and I think they're going to stub their toe here and there somewhere, but I still think they're the best team in the conference, and I think they're going to win it. I guaranteed, actually.
I saw the guarantee.
You guaranteed, pal.
Yep.
Week from tonight. Yep. It starts a week from tonight. And I also saw a former Ute player put $15,000 down on the Utes to win the Pac-12, and the payback is $45,000. So I think, again, I was just, perusing. I go, you can tell football's in the air when the bets are starting to really fall.
Have you ever laid a $15,000 bet?
How about a fiver?
Bowler likes the slots, man.
I love the pennies, man. The pennies, by the way, it's a fallacy. The penny slots, you come over there and you know what? They want 88 pennies to just have one pull on the lever. Or lever, whatever it may be. But it's a little.
I want to do a show with Bowler just complaining about the Wendover gaming authorities.
Yeah, come on.
Too many pennies.
Too many pennies.
Well, when you look at Utah, guys, obviously they have to stay healthy. Last year, health just killed them. And if they have the same experience this year, they're going to get killed again. But how many times can Cam Rising get hurt? I mean, somewhere along the line, the football gods have to smile on this kid. And they're going to do what they can to keep him reined in a little bit so that he won't get hurt. The question then becomes, can he deliver a passing game from the pocket? And that's a different look than what we've seen out of him in the past. With Keithy back and with that defense, and this team is loaded. And, okay, I might be wrong. I guaranteed it. I might be wrong, but the reasoning is there to guarantee that this team is the best team in the conference.
Keithy's health is the other piece of this puzzle. For those two to have combinations like Mahomes and a Kelsey, right? They've got to be able to connect often.
Getting the Chiefs in there when he can.
I know, I had to.
But that's a great comparison.
Yeah,
actually,
I think you have to have ball control. You got to be able to push it and move the ball with chains. Who said we got to move the ball? Was that Lavelle back in the day? No, we're going to pass the ball. But you got to connect, and you've got to move it. You got to have ball control. Knock off 7 minutes on a beautiful drive and connect. But Can he get outside the pocket? I can't wait. I don't know what is the game plan for him is, Spence.
They're not going to have designed runs for him,
No,
they say.
I'd be stunned. They're going to have to – it's like, are you forced out of the pocket? Do you have to make the move, make the smart decision? I would think is what Morgan's talking about, right? And Witt on just trying to keep him healthy.
Well, what's the difference? What's the likelihood of getting hurt? Have you guys ever seen a breakdown on that as far as percentages where quarterbacks are most likely to get hurt, in the pocket or running the ball?
I haven't seen a breakdown. I would imagine it's out of the pocket, but they're different players. This reminds me of the way they were talking about Taysom Hill between his sophomore and junior year, when it's like, no, you got to corral him, you got to keep him. And it's like, no, that's not who he is. Like, and for me, I don't know that you can rewire Cameron's brain to say when you feel pressure, you're not able to your point, maybe they're not calling design runs, but, you know, we've all seen his magic out of the pocket, and I just think that's who he is, and I'm not sure you can rewire his brain to make him something he's not.
Especially when you feel pressure. Especially coming from the rear side. Yeah. He's going to take off a little bit. Now, he may not run it. He may look, when you spend the whole year last year on the sideline watching, you're thinking to yourself as a quarterback, I'm going to do the Dan Marino thing. Mm-hmm. If I feel pressure, I'm just going to unload the ball. And that might be a smart way for him to go, unless he's got a wide open field in front of him, but slide. How about that?
Yeah, get down.
Slides is important, but also sometimes you may have to eat the ball, and they may have to work around that, just in the sense of like, okay, if I throw it into no man's land, it's a pick. If I get sacked, we live to play another day. So I don't know if that happens, but it could be part of his escape plan. I mean, sometimes just eating the ball, you have to do it.
They're drilling him with this every day, Bowler. I mean,
but I like your thought, though.
Rewiring the brain is hard, but he's being told over and over and over again.
But every quarterback, since they grew up, look, I mean, this way, looking down, you still have the sixth sense built in. There's like a wall where all of a sudden the alarms go off, and you've got to flush, and you've got to run and escape. Can he do that? And to go back to your point, I'm thinking in my head about quarterback injuries. There's a lot of times where you stand strong in the pocket and you got the leg planted and you let it go, and an offensive lineman or D lineman falls off the pile and pop. You know, I tell you, it's a roll of the dice. You can run, you can get undercut, you can get piled on, and the leg and the turf and the cleats get caught. Man, I don't know if there's any safe place on a football field nowadays.
Well, you remember his injury against Penn State. It was just an awkward plant.
Right.
It wasn't anything like caused by havoc on it. It was just an awkward plant.
How many listeners right now have torn an ACL or watched their Achilles pop stepping off the curb?
I tore my meniscus swinging a freaking golf club.
Crazy.
And I'm also 46, but it can happen. It's impossible to put these players on ice. That's why I don't know how you change him. But to your point, Gordon, if you're going to win the Big 12, if you're going to go to the CFP, and the wild dream that I have in my head is Utah hosting a college football playoff game here in Salt Lake. For that to happen, Cameron has to be under center all year.
Think about it, though, guys. This whole thing with Cameron's brain, can you work into him like a timer or a 3-step drop? And if they do that, then obviously they can't be throwing deep all the time. They do have some targets now that might be able to do that. But it's like 1, 2, 3, deliver. Mm-hmm. Put the ball at the right place at the right time for the right reason.
Yeah, it's funny, like watching Bo Nix for the Broncos and then watching him last year. He's like a point guard where it's just, boom, it's out. Mm-hmm. You know, so quick. And he looks like he's so ready for the NFL, and that's the way Dan Lanning used him last year in Oregon. Andy's system is Andy's system, but I wonder if they will cater certain things to make sure, like, look, you're the point guard. Get it out quick. We can't have you hurt. We can't have you taking hits. It's nice that they have their 5 starting offensive linemen dialed in, too. It sounds like he'll be protected, which obviously is important.
And the other aspect to this is something that Kyle has been very good at through the years, but you got to develop that run game to take the pressure off Cam so he doesn't feel like he has to run.
Yeah. I mentioned Morgan earlier because he intrigues me. He has to be a part of the defensive mindset, right, of working with Cam and giving him looks that will benefit him in some cases throughout the year. I mean, they've had to run some staggers or some delayed blitz or something from the edge to test him, to get the mind, as you said, reset, or the clock. And I think that may be the most important thing is what have they done in practice to help reset Cam Rising, because he did observe a lot. And I don't mean to use Mahomes a lot here, but I tell you, Spence brought up a great thing about Bo Nix. That kid's good.
So quick.
Yeah. But, Mahomes plays a little slower, but I liked what you said earlier, Gordon, is that if you see downfield, as smart as Cam is, I believe, is that if there's nothing there, there's nothing wrong of stepping up and then just dropping it to the sideline. And that takes care of eating the ball or taking the sack. And Mahomes does that well. If there's nothing there, he blows off the play and he says, let's go again, because he's confident with the weapons that he has. I think Cam's confident with the weapons that he has and the O-line that is going to protect him.
And where does Cam Rising go with the ball? Where's his safety valve? Well, he's got a pretty darn good one in Brant Keithy. And so if he's healthy, think about how big his year will be, because he's actually more of a receiver than he is a tight end in my mind. But who's going to cover that guy? Because he knows how to get open, and he can get open within 10 yards.
What helps Keefe is, at times, Spence and Gordo, if Cam can throw the deep ball and connect. Because then you have to respect early that they do have the ability to hurt you with a deep ball or the mid ball, but open up the middle of the field and let Keefe go in there and hunt open spots.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. I was talking to Scott Mitchell about this earlier, because Scott obviously was a guy that could fling it. And when he was at Utah, he threw for 1,000,000 yards. I was down at an event yesterday in Utah County, because I'm huge in Utah County. Shout out to my Utah County
You've
fans.
always favored that.
Certainly. My second home. And I interviewed Matt Bellini.
Oh, yeah. I listened to that.
Yeah,
it was great.
So I asked Matt about BYU Utah coming back, and he brought up 1988 when Utah trounced BYU, and they were huge underdogs, and Scott was under center. So I asked Scott, what should Utah, the offense look like as far as the percentage of pass first run? Is it 50-50? Because you talk about this every year, Gordon, when you call Kyle the dark overlord that wants to run the football.
He's changing.
Well, and 2 years ago, I don't know exactly what the ratio was, but with Cameron under center, that was probably the most potent offense that I've seen under Coach Witt. Scoring in college football has actually dipped over the past 2 years, but prior to that, it was a 15-year spike. Even Saban was throwing it everywhere. What should the ratio look like? Pass to run, 50-50? Scott said he'd like 60% pass, 40% run. I don't know if Kyle's down with that, but what do you think?
I know what Cam Rising wants.
Sure.
He wants it up there, 60-70. And but I think 60-40 is pretty good, or 50-50 at least. This isn't Kyle Whittingham's old Oldsmobile. I mean, he's got to throw the ball, and he says that all the time. What does he say every preseason? He says, we got to have improvement in the throw game. And this time, I think they're going to rely on it. I really do.
Different conference, too, Spence.
Yep. As you know,
Different
Mr. K-State.
Conference.
Yeah.
There is a grind-it-out, punch-in-the-mouth attitude. Ground game's important, but the big play is really what the Big 12 has become. K-State's done it. KU has improved because of it. Baylor used to be that way with the big throw under Chip. Or, excuse me, he always played above the numbers when we were calling games and got in trouble with his recruiting down at Baylor. But they threw the ball probably 65% of the time. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what the conference will become. I still see throwing the ball being kind of high level and probably very popular if you got the right combo. Yeah. And I think they do at Utah. I do.
All right, before we catch a break, shocking comments from Thibaut Courtois about the Belgium national team, Gordon.
I never liked Courtois.
No. Why is that?
Because some people just speak before they think, and he's one of them.
But what is Belgium losing he's refusing to play, as you know. What is Belgium losing as a player?
I think they're losing attitude.
Yeah. Would you finally pay him if it came down to helping the team?
Well, look, I don't want to speak above all of our soccer fans out there.
Thank you.
So I'll try to keep it in a language that all will understand. But every team needs a guy who keeps everything in good form, and he's that guy.
Wow.
Stunning.
You know, his insight, Spence,
Yeah.
is the only reason I come to do this show.
No, me too.
And
me
you
too.
know what? I get a little choked up.
Yeah, it is emotional.
It is
emotional.
And
it's a beautiful game.
It is. Great to see you guys. We'll see you next week, yeah?
Yeah, you bet.
All right. Next week, by the way, when Gordon and Craig are in studio, it will be game day for Utah football. Are your TV watching situations dialed in? If not, dial 801-424-DISH. Get ready for football season. What's going on, Ryan?
Today's the day you want to call, guys, because football starts this weekend. We're watching our teams play next weekend, and, guys, this is coming quick. Call us up. We'll have you installed with the best system out there. Killer promotion. Guys, Dish's offer is fantastic. Huge credits the next 2 years. The price is guaranteed not to change. We'll throw in movie channels, the multi-sports pack, and that includes the NFL Red Zone. Remember, with Dish, you can watch everything. Thursday Night Football, Amazon Video Prime, that's just a channel on Dish. If you have any other streaming apps, you can just add them right to the system, and they're like channels. You can switch right to that and watch your games, plus have the best DVR. Call us up and get the best system for the best price. We'll throw in dinner at JCW's. If you call now, call 424-DISH. That's 801-424-DISH.
All right, more next right here on ESPN 700.
And Nephi Sewell out with the ankle injury. Corrine Reed in for him. That last run by Keontae Ingram went for 28 yards. He's out of the game. Darwin Barlow in here. 1st and 10 for the Utah 47. 4-wide look here for SC and Slovis. He'll pass. Pressure coming off the edge. He tries to dump it off to Barlow, and it's deflected. Devin Lloyd got a piece of it. He was blitzing off that edge and got a piece of that ball before it could get to Barlow. Incomplete.
Yeah, and these are the plays you got to get. You got to make Slovis uncomfortable. It's a screen here. Great job by Devin, anticipating just at the right time to knock the ball down.
2nd down and 10 from the Utah 47, just underway here. 14:56 to play in the second quarter. Utah 7, USC 3. They'll move London into the right slot. 3 receivers to the right now. Barlow stays in the ball game. Slovis stays in the shotgun. They motion Drake London to the inside. That's going to be a run every time. Barlow bounces to the outside. He breaks a tackle, dodges another, and picks up 4 yards to the Utah 43. That'll bring up 3rd down and 6.
And I know USC's running the ball a little bit here, but their mantra really is to throw it. That's what they know. That's
Well, they never
are.
stick with it.
They don't.
They'll run it on you a little bit, but at the end of the day, they're going to go back to that pass.
And the answer against this defense is to run.
1 out of 3 on 3rd down are the Trojans. They've got to get to the Utah 37. Slovis in the gun. Will Utah bring pressure this time? Yes, they will, and here they come. Slovis to the outside, too easy. Finds Washington inside the 35 and down to the 31. Utah was playing way off, and that was an easy pitch and catch of 12 yards and a 1st down.
Yeah, and USC just hasn't thrown the ball that long. You got to see that defensively, and with the motion, it kind of messed Utah up just a little bit defensively because Malone Mataele should have played that tighter than he did.
So 1st and 10 for the Utah 31-yard line. Slovis stays in the shotgun here on 1st and 10. Brings a man in motion across the formation. That's Gary Bryant. He'll drop the pass again. Plenty of time now. Steps up away from the pressure. Hit from behind and taken down. Sacked all the way back at the 37-yard line. Mika Tafua circled back around and wrapped up Slovis and took him down.
But if you see Slovis, he doesn't want to scramble. He wants to sit and live in that pocket. I mean, he just doesn't want to get out, and that's really good for Utah. Great job by Mika to just keep at it and keep with him.
Utah doing a really good job getting pressure with 4 and 5 men. They're not having to bring a lot of bodies, are they?
No, and that's helpful, and then they can cover down the field.
Here we go, 2nd down, and we'll call it 16 all the way back at the 37-yard line. Slovis in the pistol formation, checking with his receivers on the outside. Turns and gives to Ingram, who's going to be wrapped up and stacked up back at the 40-yard line. Oh, man, they're going to give him the 39. He didn't even reach the 39-yard line. It'll be a loss of 2 yards. Xavier Carlton came in to wrap him up and take him down. 3rd down and long coming up.
Yeah, good to see from Xavier. Just real athletic, real aggressive here, actually getting there. And he's playing from the inside. So Xavier's not a tackle. This is that different look by Utah, and he just beats the guard to the inside.
Clark Phillips is going to see Drake London on 3rd down and 18. Slovis wants the snap, takes it. Here it comes, 4-man rush. Nobody open right now, throws it to the outside. Oh, he's got him! London! at the 20. He needed 18, and he picked up 20 yards. He was standing all by himself.
Yeah, and Clark Phillips kind of got nosy to the inside there because there's no way in the world that ball should be completed, and Utah just gave Keaton Slovis way too much. I don't know if he caught that, though, but way too much time to throw that ball.
I'm not sure he caught it in the NFL. I'm pretty sure he caught it in college, though.
Just like he was kind of juggling it as he went out of bounds.
Inside the red zone for a second time today go the Trojans from the Utah 19-yard line. Ingram, the back of the backfield. Slovis to pass again. Throws to the outside, complete to London. Phillips comes up quickly to make the tackle. It'll be about a 5, maybe 6-yard gain. Where will they mark it? They'll give him the 13, so that's a 6-yard gain on first down. And that's the pass they've gone to a bunch here today.
Yeah, and Clark Phillips is just way off. He's on it here, but they'll take this all day long if you give it to him.
Second down and 4 from the Utah 13-yard line for the Trojans. Down 7-3 here, early second quarter. Slovis with Ingram. He'll turn and give it to Keontae Ingram, who's stacked up again behind the line of scrimmage. Malone Mataele was there, but it was Devin Lloyd who wrapped him up and took him down, and Devin's having a great game here early.
Yeah, Devin's playing from a different spot. He's playing that kind of stand-up outside linebacker, defensive end player here, and he can kind of roam and play, gets off the block, and does a nice job of getting the back in the backfield.
Malapei in 3 of 5 on third down to the Trojans. They're 3rd and 8 right now. Slovis brings a man in motion across the formation. Here comes Utah. Slovis, pressure coming to him. He's going to duck, he's going to look, he's going to run, he's going to throw. Incomplete! He tried to force it into London, make it Cromanhoke his tight end, and Vontae Davis was there to knock it away. Incomplete. That'll bring up 4th down.
Yeah, big win here for Utah, but on the last couple of throws, Slovis has had plenty of time to throw the ball. They just got to find a way to get home here with these 4 guys and getting a push in the pocket, but they're just not quite getting to it.
Parker Lewis this time from 34 yards away, 10 for 10 on the year. Lewis's field goal, it's turfed a bit, and he missed it. Apparently Parker Lewis can lose. He misses that one wide right, and the Utah defense stands up big.
Field goal was unsuccessful. Timeout on the field.
10:41 to play here in the first half. Utah will get the ball back, leading 7-3.